He was a handsome Air Force sergeant who answered his country's call.
He did almost 10 years of service.
His real focus was just elevating his career from sergeant to getting promoted as far as he could.
And she was the woman who'd ride with him to the top.
She was something special. He wanted everybody to know her. This was the one.
They were the perfect couple.
Until a gruesome attack propels their life into tragedy.
3-4 police, what's your emergency?
Somebody trying to kill my boyfriend.
He was stabbed over 60 times.
This is the worst crime scene that I've ever seen in my career as a police officer.
He said, yo, they bodied Spinks.
But was the line of fire intended for someone else?
An individual was stalking her.
Oh, follow me.
I could not believe what I was reading. Just confusion, shock.
The plan was simple. Find the boyfriend, take him out, get the girl.
Somebody's upset with you. What can you do?
Or were there other, more deplorable factors at play?
He could not have verbalized those words with the damage that was done to his throat.
They came up with this pact. There was only violence.
January 2010. Residents in Shreveport, Louisiana are enjoying the fresh start of a new decade.
Shreveport is a wonderful place to live. It's a little laid back. We've got a lot of military influence because there's a military base in the adjoining city.
Just outside Shreveport is one of the largest Air Force bases in the world.
Shreveport is home of the Barksdale Air Force Base and is a place where you have friendly people and exciting entertainment.
However, the lively entertainment in Shreveport can come at a price.
Shreveport's very vibrant nightlife. Also comes with a lot of violent crime throughout the nights. There's continual shootings, robberies that kept the city a lot of times not very safe.
Around 4 a.m. on January 17th, a night of typical Shreveport revelry is coming to an end. But one couple's worst nightmare is just beginning.
3-4 police, what's your emergency?
Somebody trying to kill my boyfriend.
Am I gonna kill your boyfriend?
Oh, God.
The frantic caller identifies herself as 26-year-old Camethea Coleman.
She stated her boyfriend, Brian Spinks, and herself had been viciously attacked.
She said that a man came into her boyfriend's apartment and stabbed him several times.
Okay, is he still there?
Yes, he didn't left. I was fighting him all.
She tried to fight off the attacker, but he stabbed her too.
She sustained injuries as a result, but her boyfriend, Brian, sustained much more severe injuries.
911 operators can hear Brian's voice in the background, so there's still a chance to save him if they move quickly.
Oh. Baby, are you okay? Please help me.
Miss Coleman calling 911 was very, very emotional and crying, screaming.
Okay, I need you to calm down. We're getting police there.
First responders are immediately en route to the scene. But while on the call, the operator can hear Brian's moans become faint and eventually stop.
Say something! Brian! Say something to me, please!
29-year-old Brian Spinks was destined for a life of service to his country.
Brian came from a military family. His grandfather was in the Air Force. My father was in the Army in World War II. Myself, I was in the Marine Corps.
Brian sought to follow his father's footsteps. After graduating high school, he immediately enlisted in the U.S. Air Force.
I was proud that my son decided to follow in the military footsteps of his forebears.
Brian loved being in the Air Force and serving his country.
Brian immediately built a reputation as a person who would always go the extra mile for others and show up for his friends and fellow servicemen.
No matter who they were or where they were from, Brian was a man with an open heart and open arms.
Brian also prided himself on being a dedicated father to his 2 children.
There's a lot on him as far as, juggling his time. But Brian really loved his kids, and he really put in a lot of effort to make sure that they were well taken care of.
With his skill and reputation, it didn't take Brian long to earn a promotion to staff sergeant.
Brian was well on his way, climbing the ladder of the military ranks.
After almost 10 years of service, with 4 deployments and 2 tours in Iraq, Brian found himself stationed at Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport, Louisiana.
It was there Brian met someone who'd change his life forever. 24-year-old Camethea Coleman.
Ooh, man, it's chilly out here tonight.
I know, right?
While at a house party in 2008, destiny struck, and Brian met Camethea. She was different from any woman he'd ever met before.
So you're in the military?
Yeah, Air Force,
Well, I love a man in uniform.
The sparks just kind of flew from there.
Brian was immediately drawn to her. Camethea was the perfect combination of brains and sexy.
I have a career in social work. It's what I've always wanted to do since I was a little girl.
Wow, that's great.
She attended Grambling State University, where she earned a degree.
She wanted to help others in their lives, and that was something that Brian could relate to. And it didn't take Brian long to become completely head over heels smitten with her.
They began dating not too long after that first meeting.
Soon enough, Brian was proudly introducing Camethea to his loved ones.
He just lit up when he, talked about the possibility of getting to start building a relationship with her. And he was excited about that.
Well, Dad, this is Camethea.
Oh my gosh, very nice to meet you.
You too, sir.
All right.
She's the first young lady I ever met. She and I connected quite a bit. And I just knew, and he told me, that she was something special.
Brian felt like Camethea completed him in many ways, and to everybody else, they were the perfect couple.
Yeah, she's great.
We were excited for him because we had never really seen him in a real, long-term type of relationship. So I was happy that he met somebody he could potentially see a future with.
I was amazed at how she lit the light bulb in him. This was the one.
But now, the couple's promising future is at risk of being cut short as police and EMS race to Brian's apartment in response to a violent stabbing. They know time is of the essence if they're going to save Brian's life.
As authorities arrive, they come across a grotesquely violent scene.
Camethea is covered in blood, and Brian is even more blood-soaked.
Camethea is crying hysterically.
While paramedics attempt to revive Brian, officers tend to Camethea.
They are asking if she could recall anything about the attacker so that they could, try to catch up with him before he would get too far.
Where's he at? What's he look like? What's he look like, man?
Camethea is just hysterical. She's bleeding, and she couldn't answer any of their questions.
Police are concerned there is a violent man on the loose, but with such few details, they fear he will get away.
Who is this man, and why did he want to harm this young couple?
After spending nearly a decade in the Air Force, 29-year-old Brian Spinks was a young staff sergeant looking forward to the bright future ahead of him.
Brian just wanted to be the best person he could be, the best airman he could be, and the best father he could be.
And his future looked even brighter with his new girlfriend, Camethea Coleman, by his side.
Brian was crazy about that young lady.
So we were all happy for him.
But on January 17th, 2010, first responders have been called to Brian's apartment after a panicked 911 call from Camethea.
Brian is losing blood fast.
They've both been stabbed by an intruder.
Man, tell me what he looks like. Blackout, that's all we got right now.
First responders do everything they can to revive Brian. Unfortunately, though, their work is futile.
Despite their best efforts, first responders were unable to revive Brian. He was pronounced dead on the scene, and this home invasion has now become a murder investigation.
Will Camethea suffer a similar fate?
She has been stabbed 5 times, twice in the abdomen, once on each leg and on one hand.
They quickly take her to the hospital for more treatment.
Meanwhile, homicide detectives arrive to begin their investigation.
As we entered the house and began looking at the victim, we noticed that he had received multiple stab wounds.
Brian's body is covered in stab wounds, over 60 to be exact.
Stab wounds all around the neck. Definitely overkill.
There were multiple stab wounds on his chest and arms.
But 2 wounds in particular stand out to the detectives. A deep stab wound at the base of Brian's neck and a slash across his throat.
He had received a laceration from one ear to the other across his throat.
Obviously, whoever did this did not intend to just rough him up. They intended to kill him.
Blood spatter can be found all over the apartment.
This is the worst crime scene that I've ever seen in my career as a police officer.
By the looks of this gruesome scene, it's clear that the assailant was relentless.
As detectives continue to process the crime scene, they find not 1, but 2 murder weapons.
We noticed the 2 knives laying next to the victim. One of the knife blades was broken.
Most likely, the first knife broke during the midst of all the stabbing, and the second knife was used to finish the job.
As we began reviewing the rest of the residence, we noticed that there were 2 missing knives from the knife block in the kitchen, and the knives that were used to kill the victim appeared to be the same make of the knives that were in the kitchen block.
But what was the killer's motive?
It could not have been robbery because everything in the apartment that was valuable was undisturbed.
There was only violence. Whoever had done this seemed to have a serious grudge against Brian.
When the tragic news reaches Brian's loved ones, they're in disbelief.
They told me that my son has been the victim of a homicide. And immediately denial set in because I started trying to differentiate homicide means he's dead. I didn't know the exact details other than my son was deceased, and I had to get that in to my heart some way.
I had a whole bunch of missed phone calls, and one of the voicemails was from one of our friends that was stationed with us at the base. And I called him back, and he was like, he said, they bodied Spinks. He was like, turn on your computer. And that's when I saw the news article online. And it was just like, the stomach dropped. I could not believe what I was reading. Just confusion, shock, sadness.
As one team of investigators continues processing the scene, another begins canvassing the neighborhood for leads.
Brian's neighbor tells detectives that she thought Brian and Camethea were a lovely couple, and she'd never had any problems with them outside of the occasional loud party.
But last night was different.
The neighbor remembered being awoken due to screaming and yelling.
She was awoken by a commotion around 3:15 that morning. She heard yelling back and forth, but she really couldn't make out the words.
She didn't actually see anything helpful, and neither did anyone else in the neighborhood.
Except for Camethea.
She was really the key to unlocking what happened.
We needed to speak to Camethea Coleman immediately to get more details.
And fortunately, detectives soon received word that Camethea is ready to talk.
Detective Bowen, she's good to go?
They are notified she's in stable condition.
Luckily, her wounds are not fatal.
So once Ms. Coleman was brought from the hospital, she was brought into the detective office.
When detectives meet with Camethea, she is clearly still shaken up. But she says she has something very important to tell them.
She says she knows exactly who killed Brian.
I saw him earlier that day. Saw him riding by.
Camethea reveals she has a stalker, and he is the one who did this.
In the winter of 2010, Shreveport homicide detectives are investigating the brutal slaying of 29-year-old Brian Spinks.
He was stabbed over 60 times with his own kitchen knife. Obviously, whoever did this didn't intend to injure him. They intended to kill him.
Brian's girlfriend, Camethea Coleman, was also stabbed during the attack, but has survived.
Now Camethea is telling the investigators that she knew the attacker.
She was so distraught and emotional at the scene, but now that her mind has settled and she's calmed down, she in fact did recognize the attacker.
I saw him earlier that day. Saw him riding by.
She advised that an individual was stalking her.
What's this guy's name?
John. He said his name was John.
You know what John's last name was? Describe John for me.
He's dark. He's probably like a little taller than me.
She told police that she'd met him at a club a while back.
We were talking, but I told him there would never be anything because I was with Brian.
According to Camethea, John wouldn't take no for an answer.
He was aggressively trying to pursue her, and he'd been following her.
He got the picture, but then he showed back up. He would pop up like in crazy places.
In fact, Camethea says on the afternoon of January 16th, John popped up outside her apartment.
So this is before about 2 or 3 in the afternoon? Mm-hmm. Okay. Did he say anything to you? You just saw him or what? Did y'all talk? Be strong for me, girl, okay? We gotta find out.
Through tears, Camethea tells detectives John didn't say anything to her that afternoon, but later that night, she still couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched.
She'd been out club hopping with her friends, and as the bars began to close, she decided it might be best to go to Brian's house to go to sleep, as she often did when she was out late.
I missed you.
I miss you too.
You went over to his apartment. I know. It's painful, okay? But I'm here for you. Tell me what happened when you got to the apartment.
When I got there, we were just talking.
Until the night took a frightening turn.
Suddenly, a man burst through the door. Camethea said she immediately recognized him as John.
Oh, follow me.
Camethea says when John arrived, she was alarmed, but she never could have imagined what happened next.
And I was like, what are you doing here? He went to the kitchen.
That's when John started stabbing Brian.
John, get out! What are you doing?
Oh, what?
Get out!
What the hell are you doing, bro?
Get out!
And he got the knife and we just started jabbing.
Camethea says she was in shock as she watched the violence unfold.
I was looking at John. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
But John was relentless.
The first knife broke during the midst of all the stabbing.
Then he was just using one knife and was stabbing Brian repeatedly. Camethea said she then knew she had to do something.
When Brian was on the ground, I jumped on him.
Please, no.
That's when John turned the knife on her.
No! Stop!
As the investigation into the violent murder of Brian Spinks continues, detectives are speaking with his girlfriend, Camethea Coleman, who was also injured during the crime.
Camethea says that her stalker, who she only knows as John, broke into Brian's apartment and began stabbing him.
When Brian was on the ground, I jumped on him, and that's when he stabbed me on my leg. I know I felt a couple of them.
Camethea says at that point, she runs to grab her phone and call 911.
When John saw this, he slit Brian's throat, plunged a knife into his neck, and ran out of the door.
Camethea said with the phone to her ear, she ran to Brian's side.
I was just shaking him. I didn't know what to do. I pulled the knives out of Brian.
She removes the knife from his neck, and shortly after, first responders arrive.
Based on the story that Camethea had given detectives, if John had followed her home, it's possible that it was an act of jealousy.
The plan was simple. Find the boyfriend, take him out, get the girl. But detectives know they'll have to investigate further to determine whether or not this was in fact the case.
In their search for more information on the couple, detectives turn to Brian and Camethea's friends, and what they discover is eye-opening.
Camethea had a dark side to her.
Brian had dropped some lines to me about like, hey man, she's, Kim kind of crazy. We started seeing a change in their relationship, and she was being clingy and asking more questions about what he was doing and stuff like that.
What are you even talking to, Brian? What are you talking about?
Camethea always thought that he was looking for another person to be with.
I'm not letting you see my ball. No, stop.
Her behavior over Brian became controlling.
She was becoming more and more compulsive. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, she's in his phone. She's looking under the bed, she's looking in the closet, looking for something that wasn't there.
You're acting crazy!
What did you just call me?
Friends say, despite the tumultuous nature of their relationship, Camethea even began pressuring Brian to get married.
For Brian, this was too much, and he began to feel suffocated in the relationship.
Brian has a son and a daughter, and he was doing his regular Air Force job and school. And he just wanted a little time to himself sometime.
So Brian decided to distance himself from Camethea.
I need some space.
What?
I need some space.
No, you can't.
No, I'm
you
done.
can't leave,
No,
Brian.
no.
But Camethea wasn't having it.
There are times where we've been out and we saw Kim at different places.
She was popping up everywhere. Anytime he and his friends went out for drinks, went out to the club, anything, she was there, and it was quickly becoming a problem.
It was starting to sound like Camethea was the true stalker.
Friends say the situation came to a head on the night of January 16th, the same night Brian was killed.
It was just a regular night. We went downtown, we were having drinks, listening to music.
Brian was in the club, and he was doing what they call the Texas two-step with this young lady. This young lady was the girlfriend of one of Brian's good friends, and her boyfriend is present as well.
But then, Camethea showed up.
As soon as Camethea came face to face with the woman, all hell broke loose.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Stop it.
My man!
They couldn't believe that she had started a fight in the club.
Back up! No! Get away from me!
Camethea Coleman has told Shreveport detectives that her boyfriend, Brian Spinks, was killed by her jealous stalker, who she only knows as John. But now detectives are wondering if the true stalker is Camethea.
He was trying to separate himself. She was trying to control him.
Brian's friends say Camethea's possessive behavior came to a head on the night of his death.
Brian had gone out with some of his friends. Everyone was drinking. And then Miss Coleman appeared at that establishment.
She saw Brian hanging out with another woman who was actually just a friend and completely lost it.
What the hell do you think you're doing? This is my man, and you better stay away from him!
Camethea began screaming at her to stay away from Brian.
Don't tell me to relax! Don't tell me to relax! No, I knew you was cheating on me, Brian!
People were trying to calm her down, telling her to relax. We pulled her off to the side and we were like, hey man, chill out. Like, we all had a good time. He cares about you, he loves you. Just relax.
Don't tell me to relax! Don't tell me to relax!
Camethea had clearly gone off the handle, and it didn't go unnoticed by Brian.
No!
That's it.
Brian!
I'm done.
No, you're not done!
That's
We're
it.
not done! Don't you walk away from me, Brian! It's not over! Don't walk away! Get off of me! Get off of me!
He had enough of that type of reaction from her. And I think he just was fed up with it and was like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. At that point, Brian told one of her friends, like, look, just take me home.
On the ride home, Brian decided to end his relationship with Camethea for good.
Brian's friend stated that he had left a voicemail saying, I am done with you.
After speaking with Brian's friends, detectives think they now know the real reason Camethea went over to Brian's house that night.
If Brian finally pulled the plug on their relationship, it's likely that Camethea was not there just to talk. She went to his home to confront him.
At this point, Camethea Coleman has made the shift from innocent victim to suspect number one.
She does have every motive to do Brian harm.
They believe it's time to have another sit-down with Camethea Coleman.
Investigators called Camethea in with no trouble under the guise of following up on Brian's investigation.
Once she arrived, they informed her that she was now a suspect in Brian's murder.
What happened last night?
What I told you?
You do realize that if I prove that you're lying to me, that you're gonna go to jail for the rest of your life. You do not come out of prison on a murder charge in Louisiana. So I'm giving you the opportunity now to set the record straight, okay?
But Camethea isn't budging.
She sticks to her original statement, saying John, her stalker, is the main suspect they need to be looking into.
What do you want to find? I mean, I've told you
Well, we
everything.
want to find out the honest truth. How many times you guys have been knocked down, drag out, getting into it?
Although Camethea continues to insist she didn't kill Brian, she does admit that their relationship had become rocky in recent months.
I need some space.
We're dating, but I mean, we've been off and on for I don't know how long.
She also admits that she ran into Brian at the club that night, but says it wasn't planned.
We learned that Brian and Camethea had made a pact if they were going to go out separately, not to go to the same establishment.
They both agreed that spending quality time away from each other was important for a successful relationship.
We just never go to the same club together. It was just our thing.
But Camethea claims on the night of January 16th, she accidentally showed up at the same club Brian and his friends were already at.
When she saw him, she approached him and calmly asked him not to be mad at her.
I was calm. I just wanted to talk to him.
But it was no use. She said that Brian was livid.
You keep doing this. I need you to...
He was like, why were you there? And he was pissed. He was mad at me.
She advised that she had gone to the apartment to talk to Brian to try and calm things over because of what happened at the club, trying to work things out with him. But Brian was not having it.
I told you don't listen.
Camethea says he began squeezing her hand very hard and it hurt.
Go. You just I told you.
She claimed that Brian grabbed her throat with one hand and started choking her.
Camethea says she was eventually able to free herself.
You jerked away.
She says she was trying to get out of his apartment immediately.
Was like pushed you. I went to the knife out.
She pulled the knife out.
Camethea told investigators he had stabbed her several times before she could get away from him.
And I pushed him. And I was like, if I don't do something, I'll kill you.
So when she freed herself, she dashed to the kitchen to arm herself.
She then confessed to stabbing him, however, stated it was self-defense because Brian had attacked her previously and she was afraid for him to attack her again.
I used to do my hands too.
So he just kept stabbing. When did his throat get cut? Because it was cut bad.
Once again, she blames that on this mysterious John character.
John did? So he showed up in the middle of y'all fighting?
Somebody's upset with you. What can you do?
Camethea stated that in an attempt to protect her, John took the knife away from Brian and began stabbing him harder and deeper.
Camethea says she begged him to stop, but John was insistent on killing Brian.
I didn't want to go that far. I was just trying to protect myself. I did not want to go that far.
But detectives know that Camethea's story doesn't add up.
All of the evidence collectively was telling that Camethea was the likely murderer, and John the intruder didn't exist.
At this point, Camethea realizes she's in hot water, so she decides to lawyer up.
Can I get a attorney, please?
That's what you want.
Time now is 09:21. Ms. Coleman is requesting an attorney. All tapes will stop at this time.
Regardless of Camethea's new story, investigators have enough to arrest her and charge her with Brian's murder.
But will justice ever be served in this case?
Camethea pleaded not guilty due to reason of insanity.
She was definitely putting on a show.
In January of 2010, Shreveport investigators have Camethea Coleman in custody for the murder of her estranged boyfriend, Brian Spinks.
When I found out that she was under arrest for this, the shock just got even more amplified because this was somebody that he cared about, that we thought cared about him.
The commanding officer called me and he said, she's the one that did it. I said, no way. There's no way. He said, yes, no way did she do it. Yes, she did.
Even with Camethea behind bars, investigators are still discovering additional evidence against her.
A forensic medical examiner studies both Brian's autopsy report as well as Camethea's medical records from the night of the murder.
What they determined was that Camethea's 5 stab wounds were self-inflicted.
Investigators can only assume that Camethea stabbed herself to make it look like she acted in self-defense.
And in the months leading up to trial, Camethea continues going to extreme lengths to avoid taking responsibility for Brian's death.
Camethea pleaded not guilty due to reason of insanity. She stated that she'd blacked out and was completely unaware of what she had done to Brian.
And in July of 2011, she was found to be mentally incompetent to stand trial.
It takes more than a year from Brian's murder for Camethea to undergo enough psychiatric treatment to be deemed fit for trial.
She went to 3 different doctors for competency. And one of the doctors said that she was malingering, that they kind of knew that, that she was acting as if something was wrong with her when there was nothing wrong with her. She was definitely competent and was putting on a show, basically.
On April 23, 2012, Camethea Coleman finally stands before judge and jury.
Camethea stands by her plea of not guilty due to self-defense. She claims she was in a very abusive relationship with Brian, and that night was only the last in a long history of violent nights.
Brian was the opposite of violent. When her defense started saying that, we knew it was way far from the truth that any of that would have ever taken place.
We were all in pain, watching them trying to make my son into a woman abuser with no evidence. She never told anybody she ever got hit, no scratches, no bruises, no reports, no nothing.
When it's their turn, prosecutors describe what they believe actually happened the night Brian was killed.
They believe that Camethea went to confront him about the incident at the club.
Please,
no,
I just
Kim,
want to.
no, Kim,
I am
listen,
done. I just want to talk to you.
Talk about what? Kim,
No.
it's over.
Brian said that things are over, and that's when she decided that if she couldn't have him, no one would.
Prosecutors believe that once Brian's back was turned, Camethea grabbed a knife from the butcher's block and stabbed him in the back.
Sick and tired of this.
They argued that then Brian stumbled into the living room where Camethea continued her vicious attack, stabbing him so many times that the knife broke.
Camethea could have stopped there.
But she went back to retrieve another knife after the first steak knife was broken. And she continued to stab him and stab him and stab him.
And then when she felt like Brian wouldn't survive, she called 911 to appear like a concerned girlfriend.
Somebody trying to kill my boyfriend.
However, Camethea didn't expect Brian to start speaking when she was on the phone with 911.
Concerned that he might say something that gave her away, prosecutors believe that then, with one final push, Camethea inflicted the fatal wound to Brian's throat to keep him quiet.
During the trial, the coroner pointed out that Brian could not have verbalized those words with the damage that was done to the front part of his throat, which means that damage was done to his throat after she made the phone call.
Prosecutors believe that in order to sell her self-defense claim, Camethea turned the knife on herself and made up the bogus story about John the Stalker to lead police off her trail.
They believe her story about John was completely fabricated and he did not exist.
A lot of people ask me, like, he was in the military, why didn't he fight her off? He's not a fighter. He's not an aggressive person. Some of the defense marks that we found out that were on him, he was clearly just, balled up, trying to survive, trying to live.
When the jury retires to deliberate, they side with prosecutors.
They unanimously found Camethea guilty of second-degree murder.
Camethea Coleman is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
She got what she deserved. She does not need to be on the streets anywhere for the crime that she committed.
When you hear the words, there is joy, but not joy in a happy way. More a joy and a relief that none of the lies that she said the jury believed. relief that justice has been, served. And that his family could, start the grieving process, start moving on.
Nobody won anything that night. 2 families lost their children forever. Yeah, she's getting jailed the rest of her life, but what did anybody win? It didn't bring Brian back.
The world lost a good person, a person that really cared about the people that were in his life.
Brian was crazy about that young lady. And that's the part that hurts. He was murdered by somebody he loved.
The town of Black Hollow stopped sleeping after October 17th, 1989. Windows stayed locked even during daylight. Parents walked children to school carrying baseball bats beneath winter coats. Gas station owners installed floodlights that burned through the night like prison towers. Every creak outside a bedroom window became a reason to call police. Every unknown car idling near the woods triggered panic. And at the center of it all lay a single horrifying question nobody could answer. Who killed Emily Grayson? She was 17 years old when she vanished. Blonde hair, small-town smile, captain of the debate team. The kind of girl teachers described as too bright to stay here forever. She worked evenings at Miller's Grocery just off Route 9, usually finishing around 9. 15 before driving home through a narrow stretch of forest road locals called Briar Lane. 15 minutes. That was the drive. 15 minutes between the grocery store and her family's farmhouse outside town. On most nights, the road sat empty except for deer crossing through fog and headlights disappearing between trees. But on October 17th, Emily never made it home. At 10:02 p.m., her mother called police after finding Emily's bedroom empty and her car missing. Officers assumed teenage rebellion at first. Arguments with parents. Secret boyfriend. Late-night partying. Small-town police had seen it before. But the tone changed 43 minutes later when a truck driver reported a vehicle abandoned near the edge of Briar Lane with the driver's door hanging open and the engine still running. Deputies arrived expecting an accident. Instead, they found terror frozen in place. Emily's white Honda Civic sat crooked against a shallow ditch. Headlights cutting through mist into empty woods. Her purse remained on the passenger seat, keys still inside the ignition. One shoe lay in mud near the roadside. The other was missing. There were no signs of collision. No blood, no body, just silence and the strange feeling that something violent had erupted there moments earlier before, vanishing into darkness. Then Deputy Carl Werner noticed the fingernail marks. Deep scratches dragged across the exterior driver's side door like someone clawed desperately against metal while being pulled away. The search began immediately. Volunteers flooded Briar Lane, carrying flashlights and hunting rifles while dogs combed through wet underbrush, searching for scent trails. Helicopters circled overhead. Police divers searched nearby creeks despite freezing temperatures. By dawn, nearly 200 people were scattered through the woods, screaming Emily's name into endless black trees. At 6:13 a.m., a volunteer discovered her jacket hanging from a broken branch nearly half a mile from the abandoned car. At 8:41, they found her body. Emily Grayson lay beside a narrow ravine, hidden beneath dead leaves and rain-soaked branches. Her hands were bruised. Her face carried signs of violent struggle. The medical examiner later confirmed she died from blunt force trauma combined with strangulation. But what horrified investigators most was the condition of the scene itself. There were almost no usable footprints despite muddy ground. No fingerprints. No weapon. Whoever killed her either planned carefully or got unbelievably lucky. Black Hollow exploded into fear overnight. Parents stopped allowing children outside alone. Businesses closed earlier. Hunters refused entering woods near Briar Lane after sunset. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some believed a drifter passed through town days before the murder. Others whispered about satanic cults hiding in forests. One caller told police she saw a tall man standing motionless near the Grayson property weeks earlier, watching the house from across a cornfield. Another claimed Emily argued publicly with an unknown older man outside Miller's grocery days before disappearing. Investigators chased everything: boyfriends, co-workers, teachers, truckers passing through Route 9, men with assault records, hunters familiar with the woods. The sheriff's department interviewed more than 400 people during the first 6 months. Alone, detectives worked until exhaustion blurred entire days together. Yet every lead collapsed eventually into dead ends and contradictions. Then came the first truly disturbing detail. The medical examiner discovered a tiny fragment of blue plastic trapped beneath Emily's fingernail. During autopsy, barely visible, smaller than a grain of rice. Investigators initially dismissed it as contamination from clothing or roadside debris. Still, protocol required preservation. The fragment entered evidence storage inside a tiny sealed envelope labeled simply, "Unknown Blue Particle." Nobody realized that microscopic piece of plastic would haunt the case for 30 years. The months after Emily's murder destroyed Black Hollow psychologically. Businesses near Briar Lane lost customers. Families moved away. Teenagers traveled in groups everywhere. Halloween was canceled entirely in 1989 after anonymous calls warned another girl would disappear. Before winter, police traced the threats nowhere. Fear became permanent background noise in town life. And still, the killer remained invisible. Then another girl vanished. 3 months after Emily's murder, 20-year-old college student Rachel Dunn disappeared while driving home from a party 40 miles south of Black Hollow. Her car was found abandoned near woodland, almost identical to Emily's case. Driver's side door open. Purse left behind. Signs of struggle. But Rachel's body never surfaced. State police immediately considered a connection. Newspapers exploded with headlines about a possible serial predator stalking isolated roads across the county. Television crews arrived daily. FBI profilers entered the investigation, suggesting the killer likely possessed strong local knowledge, social invisibility, and escalating violent fantasies. Residents became convinced a monster lived among them, hiding behind ordinary smiles. Then came another strange clue. Witnesses in both disappearances reported seeing an older, dark-colored pickup truck near the scenes, shortly before the victims vanished. No license plate obtained. No clear driver description. Just fragments. Rust along the side panels. One broken headlight. A low grinding engine noise. Detectives flooded surrounding counties searching for matching vehicles. Hundreds appeared. None connected conclusively. Years passed. Nothing. Emily's parents aged visibly beneath endless interviews and failed leads. Her father reportedly drove Briar Lane every night for almost 2 years, hoping somehow to see something police missed. Her mother stopped attending church after townspeople began treating the family like a living ghost. Story. Meanwhile, Rachel Dunn remained missing entirely. Her disappearance drifting slowly into cold case archives beside Emily's unsolved murder. Then in 1996, another body appeared. 26-year-old waitress Karen Holt was discovered near abandoned train tracks outside Black Hollow after failing to return home from work. The similarities chilled investigators immediately. Signs of struggle, blunt force trauma, remote wooded location, one shoe missing. Panic surged through town all over again. But forensic evidence complicated everything. Karen's murder lacked the strangulation marks seen in Emily's case. DNA recovered from Karen's clothing excluded all known suspects tied to earlier investigations. Some detectives believed a copycat killer emerged inspired by local legends surrounding Briar Lane. Others insisted all three crimes connected despite forensic inconsistencies. The public no longer trusted police either way. Rumors consumed Black Hollow constantly. Certain names surfaced repeatedly in bars and diners, but never produced evidence. One man committed suicide after being falsely accused publicly during a town meeting. Another family moved away after harassment escalated toward their teenage son because he drove a dark pickup truck similar to witness descriptions. And through it all sat the tiny blue plastic fragment, untouched, inside evidence storage. Forgotten. Dust-covered. Waiting. The investigation changed unexpectedly in 2004 when retired Deputy Carl Werner gave a local newspaper interview before dying from cancer. During the article, Werner revealed something never released publicly. The night Emily disappeared, officers discovered a strange smell lingering inside her abandoned car. Industrial chemicals, sharp and synthetic, like melted plastic, Werner described it. Detectives at the time considered the detail meaningless because the vehicle showed no signs of manufacturing residue or fire damage. But after the article published, a former employee from Black Hollow Packaging Company contacted police with a startling observation. The factory used specialized blue industrial plastic seals during the late 80s. Tiny blue seals. Exactly the kind that could fracture into microscopic fragments under pressure. Investigators reopened evidence storage immediately. Forensic analysts examined the preserved blue particle again using technology unavailable in 1989. The results stunned everyone. The plastic matched a discontinued industrial locking tab manufactured exclusively for cargo. Restraints used in shipping trucks during the late 80s. Suddenly the case shifted violently. Not random roadside murder. Not wandering drifter. Someone connected to freight transport. Truck drivers. Warehouse workers. Loading crews. People moving invisibly across counties every day. Detectives pulled employment records from Black Hollow Packaging dating back 30 years. Hundreds of names surfaced, most impossible to track fully after decades passed. But one employee immediately caught attention. Daniel Mercer, former freight supervisor, owner of a dark blue pickup truck registered in 1989. Known history of violent behavior toward women. And most disturbing of all, Daniel Mercer lived less than 3 miles from Briar Lane the night Emily Grayson died. For 30 years, Black Hollow feared a faceless monster hiding somewhere beyond the woods. Now investigators began wondering whether the killer spent those same years walking openly through town unnoticed by everyone. When detectives reopened the Black Hollow murders in 2004, Daniel Mercer had already become a ghost drifting quietly through the edges of town life. 58 years old, divorced twice, living alone in a weather-beaten trailer outside county limits near an abandoned quarry. Former co-workers described him as angry, unpredictable, obsessed with control. Women who dated him used words like explosive, possessive, cold. One ex-girlfriend claimed Mercer once followed her for 3 hours after accusing her of flirting with a cashier at a gas station. Another reported he punched holes through walls during arguments, then cried afterward while insisting stress made him lose control. None of it proved murder. But after decades without direction, investigators finally had something that felt dangerous enough to chase. Detective Laura Vance led the reopened task force. Unlike most original investigators, she grew up hearing about Emily Grayson like a bedtime horror story whispered through Black Hollow kitchens. Parents used the case to scare daughters into avoiding lonely roads after dark. Teachers locked school doors earlier every October. Even now, 15 years after the murder, Briar Lane still carried a reputation that made locals drive faster through the woods without realizing it. Vance understood the fear personally. She also understood what 30 years of rumors had done to the town. She wanted certainty more than headlines. The task force quietly obtained Mercer's employment history first. The timeline disturbed everyone immediately. In 1989, Mercer worked late freight shifts at Black Hollow Packaging, less than 4 miles from Miller's Grocery, where Emily worked evenings. He routinely drove cargo routes using industrial restraint systems connected to the exact blue plastic tabs matching the fragment recovered beneath Emily's fingernail. More unsettling still, records placed Mercer working overnight the same week Rachel Dunn vanished south of Black Hollow. Then investigators uncovered something else. Mercer owned 2 pickup trucks during the late 80s. One dark blue, one headlight repeatedly repaired after collision damage. The similarities piled up fast enough to make veteran detectives nervous. But they still lacked direct evidence connecting Mercer physically to Emily or Rachel. 30 years had poisoned the case already. Memories faded. Witnesses died. Physical evidence deteriorated. Prosecutors warned repeatedly against rushing toward conclusions simply because Mercer fit the atmosphere surrounding the crimes. Then a retired mechanic named Owen Pierce walked into the sheriff's department carrying an old notebook. Pierce operated a repair garage outside Black Hollow during the late 80s. After seeing renewed media coverage about the blue plastic fragment, he remembered something strange. According to his records, Mercer brought his dark pickup truck into the garage 3 days after Emily Grayson's murder, requesting replacement for a damaged interior passenger door panel. The repair notes included one handwritten line. Deep scratch damage. Looks clawed. Detectives nearly stopped breathing reading it. Pierce remembered Mercer acting unusually nervous during the visit too. Wouldn't let anyone near the truck longer than necessary, he later testified. Kept smoking outside, pacing around like he expected trouble. Investigators tracked down the vehicle immediately. Mercer no longer owned it. According to state registration files, the truck had been junked in 1993 after flood damage near Tulsa, Oklahoma. Detectives feared the evidence disappeared forever until a salvage yard employee revealed portions of the vehicle were sold separately years earlier before destruction, including the passenger side door. The task force launched a frantic search across salvage records stretching back more than a decade. Weeks passed, dead ends multiplied, then finally a breakthrough surfaced in rural Kansas. A retired farmer unknowingly purchased the damaged truck door years earlier to patch fencing around livestock pens. Detectives arrived expecting nothing useful after decades exposed to weather. Instead, they found scratches still visible beneath rust and peeling paint. Long, jagged, human. Forensic teams transported the door immediately. Laboratory analysis revealed microscopic traces of biological material buried deep inside damaged metal grooves. Time degraded most of it beyond recovery, but one partial DNA profile emerged weakly from the corrosion. Female. Inconclusive, yet enough to suggest the scratches likely came from human fingernails during violent struggle. The case exploded publicly once news leaked. Television networks flooded Black Hollow again for the first time since the 90s. Satellite trucks crowded outside the courthouse. National reporters interviewed frightened residents beside Briar Lane while dramatic music played, beneath headlines asking whether a serial killer hid in plain sight for decades. Some townspeople welcomed the renewed attention, believing justice finally approached. Others feared investigators targeted Mercer simply because the town desperately needed a villain. Mercer himself denied everything. During initial questioning, he appeared calm, almost to the point of boredom. He admitted owning the truck, admitted working freight shifts, admitted driving Briar Lane occasionally. But he denied knowing Emily Grayson personally and claimed the damaged passenger door came from hauling scrap metal. Detectives pushed harder regarding Rachel Dunn and Karen Holt. Mercer laughed softly before answering. You people spent 30 years looking for monsters. Now you're trying to build one. Then Detective Vance showed him the photograph of Emily. Witnesses later described the atmosphere changing instantly. Mercer stared too long. Not surprise. Recognition. Just a flicker across his face before he looked away. Vance noticed immediately. So did the FBI profiler sitting behind mirror glass. The task force intensified surveillance after the interview. Detectives followed Mercer, constantly hoping pressure might expose cracks in his behavior. They watched him drink alone at roadside bars, drive aimlessly through old industrial roads after midnight, sit parked outside Briar Lane for nearly 40 minutes one evening without exiting his vehicle. Then things became stranger. Anonymous letters began arriving at the sheriff's department. No return address. No fingerprints. Each envelope contained clipped newspaper fragments discussing Emily Grayson's murder alongside. Short typed messages. You missed something. She wasn't first. Check the water. Police initially dismissed the letters as attention-seeking hoaxes inspired by media coverage. But after the third message arrived, Detective Vance noticed something unsettling. The typewriter font matched old freight inventory forms used at Black Hollow packaging during the late 80s. Forms Mercer handled regularly. Search warrants followed immediately. Investigators raided Mercer's trailer expecting trophies, weapons, maybe hidden evidence linked directly to the murders. What they found instead disturbed them in entirely different ways. Hundreds of newspaper clippings covering missing women cases across multiple states. Handwritten notebooks cataloging highway routes and police scanner frequencies. Old maps marked with circles around wooded areas and abandoned industrial lots. And inside a locked toolbox beneath Mercer's bed, detectives discovered a single white sneaker. Size 6. Women's. The room reportedly fell silent. Emily Grayson lost one shoe the night she died. Forensic testing began immediately. The sneaker showed severe age deterioration after decades hidden inside the toolbox. But traces of soil embedded within the sole matched mineral composition near Briar Lane. More importantly, the shoe brand and manufacturing year aligned perfectly with shoes Emily wore regularly according to old family photographs. But the evidence still stopped short of certainty. No serial numbers. No direct DNA. Just another horrifying coincidence tightening slowly around Daniel Mercer. Then Mercer disappeared. 3 days after the search warrant, detectives arrived for follow-up questioning and found the trailer empty. Bed untouched. Wallet gone. Pickup truck missing. Witnesses later reported seeing Mercer driving north through Black Hollow shortly before dawn, carrying several duffel bags in the truck bed. Panic spread instantly. Residents flooded police hotlines claiming sightings everywhere. Gas stations, campgrounds, highway diners. One terrified woman reported an older man matching Mercer's description standing outside her house, staring through windows before vanishing into woods when she turned on lights. The manhunt consumed the region. Helicopters searched forests surrounding Briar Lane while roadblocks stretched across county. Highways. Authorities feared Mercer might commit suicide before trial. Others worried he planned to kill again. Fear returned to Black Hollow with terrifying speed. Reopening wounds many believed finally started healing. Then another body surfaced. A hunter discovered skeletal remains buried shallowly beside a creek 15 miles outside town. Female, young, decades old, one shoe missing. Detectives rushed to the scene under pouring rain while television helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live images nationwide. Dental records confirmed the remains belonged to Rachel Dunn. After 16 years buried beneath mud and silence, the missing college student finally came home. And wrapped around one weathered wrist, investigators found something else. A tiny broken piece of blue industrial plastic still tangled inside the decayed fabric of her. jacket. The same microscopic clue connecting Emily Grayson to Daniel Mercer all those years earlier. For the first time since 1989, detectives no longer believed they were hunting one isolated killer. They believed they were uncovering an entire hidden pattern of violence stretching silently across decades beneath the surface of Black Hollow. The discovery of Rachel Dunn's remains shattered Black Hollow all over again. For 16 years, her family lived suspended between hope and horror, wondering whether she might still be alive somewhere beyond the reach of police and headlines. Now that uncertainty ended beside a muddy creek under cold rain while forensic teams photographed bones half buried beneath roots and collapsed earth. Rachel's mother reportedly collapsed at the scene after identifying the silver bracelet recovered. Near the remains, news cameras captured paramedics leading her away, while reporters described the moment as the reopening of a nightmare. But investigators focused on something even more terrifying. The blue plastic fragment tangled inside Rachel's jacket matched the microscopic particle recovered from Emily Grayson almost perfectly. The same industrial cargo restraint material. The same discontinued manufacturing source. The same invisible clue buried for decades beneath forgotten evidence. Suddenly the case no longer resembled coincidence. It resembled a pattern. Detective Laura Vance assembled a full behavioral timeline around Daniel Mercer within 48 hours after Rachel's identification. The results chilled the entire task force. Mercer's freight routes during the late 80s overlapped repeatedly with unsolved disappearances, involving young women near isolated highways and wooded access roads across 3 states. Most victims vanished briefly from public attention because their lives existed on the edges of social visibility. Waitresses, college students traveling home alone, women leaving late shifts, young hitchhikers. Cases, too, scattered geographically to connect before digital databases existed. Now they aligned around Mercer like dark stars. And Mercer himself remained missing. Federal authorities officially joined the manhunt after Rachel Dunn's identification. Mercer's photograph flooded television broadcasts nationwide. State police warned residents not to approach him under any circumstances. Witnesses described him increasingly as unstable, paranoid, and possibly armed. Yet despite constant coverage, Mercer seemed to evaporate beyond reach every time investigators closed distance. Then came a phone call. At 2:17 a.m., Black Hollow Dispatch received a distorted anonymous call from a roadside payphone 70 miles outside town. The caller whispered only one sentence before disconnecting. "You should stop digging near the water." Detectives traced the location immediately, but by the time officers arrived, the payphone stood empty beside an abandoned gas station surrounded by woods. Rain washed away potential footprints before forensic teams reached the scene. Still, investigators believed Mercer made the call personally. The implication terrified everyone involved. There were more bodies. The task force expanded searches around rivers, drainage areas, abandoned quarries, and remote creek beds tied loosely to Mercer's former freight routes. Cadaver dogs swept acres of wilderness while volunteers searched ravines and overgrown industrial properties. The psychological toll on Black Hollow deepened again. Residents began wondering how many women disappeared over the years without anyone realizing the connections. Then investigators uncovered another disturbing piece of Mercer's past. In 1987, 2 years before Emily Grayson's murder, Mercer received disciplinary action at Black Hollow Packaging after a female employee accused him of trapping her inside a loading bay during an argument. According to archived records, the woman claimed Mercer grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave bruises while repeatedly asking why she was trying to embarrass him. The complaint never reached criminal court because the employee moved away shortly afterward. Detectives tracked her down in Arizona. What she revealed changed the atmosphere surrounding the case instantly. According to her testimony, Mercer became obsessed with certain women at the factory. Quiet women, younger women, women who avoided confrontation. He followed them during breaks, watched them from freight platforms, offered rides home nobody requested. Most dismissed his behavior as creepy but harmless because Mercer maintained a reputation as socially awkward rather than openly dangerous. Then she described something else. Mercer carried industrial restraint tabs constantly inside his pockets while working freight docks. Blue tabs, the same kind recovered from Emily and Rachel. The connection tightened further. Meanwhile, investigators discovered Mercer once owned property outside Black Hollow near an abandoned reservoir locals avoided after dark because of dangerous terrain and old urban legends about drownings. Search teams entered the area cautiously using cadaver dogs and excavation equipment. The woods surrounding the reservoir felt unnaturally silent, according to several officers. One deputy later admitted the atmosphere reminded him of walking through a place holding its breath. At first they found nothing. Then a dog alerted near collapsed concrete drainage pipes hidden beneath thick vegetation. Excavation crews uncovered fragments of women's clothing buried beneath mud and debris dating back decades. Nearby sat a rusted oil drum filled with burned personal items, wallet fragments, jewelry, melted cosmetics containers, photographs too damaged to identify fully. And beneath everything else, investigators discovered human teeth. Several. The recovery operation expanded immediately. News helicopters hovered constantly above the reservoir while authorities sealed roads surrounding the site. Rumors exploded nationwide that Mercer operated some kind of hidden burial ground near Black Hollow. For years, investigators refused confirming specifics publicly. But privately, the task force already understood the scale of what might emerge from the woods. Forensic anthropologists eventually identified remains belonging to two previously unsolved missing persons cases from neighboring counties. One victim disappeared in 1988, the other in 1991. Both young women. Both last seen driving alone at night. Both connected loosely to highways Mercer traveled during freight assignments. The case transformed overnight from a local cold case into a potential serial homicide investigation, spanning decades. And still Daniel Mercer remained free. Then the sightings became personal. Several residents reported Mercer appearing near Black Hollow again after dark despite ongoing statewide searches. A retired teacher claimed she saw him parked outside Emily Grayson's former school staring toward the building before driving away slowly. Another witness described a man matching Mercer's appearance standing motionless near Briar Lane during heavy rain around midnight. Detective Vance believed Mercer returned intentionally, not to hide, to watch. Serial offenders often revisit locations emotionally tied to crimes, especially when investigations intensify publicly. The profiler assisting the task force warned Mercer likely viewed Black Hollow as territory rather than merely a place connected to evidence. That possibility unsettled everyone because it suggested Mercer did not fear the town's attention. He fed on it. Then came the most chilling discovery yet. During renewed forensic examination of Emily Grayson's preserved clothing, analysts uncovered microscopic traces of industrial lubricant embedded in jacket fibers. The chemical composition matched lubricant used specifically in cargo loading winches manufactured during the late 80s. Equipment Mercer handled daily. Investigators finally believed they could place Emily physically inside or against freight equipment. Shortly before death, prosecutors prepared aggressively for eventual charges despite Mercer's absence. But Detective Vance feared something worse than failed prosecution now. Mercer knew police were finding evidence. He knew bodies connected to him were surfacing, and desperate offenders often become unpredictable when control collapses. That fear proved justified 4 nights later. At 11:48 p.m., a teenage girl driving home from work reported a dark pickup truck following her along Briar Lane. According to her statement, the truck stayed close enough that she could hear grinding metal from the engine. When she accelerated, it accelerated. When she turned, it turned. Terrified, she drove directly toward town instead of home while calling 911 from her cell phone. Police units intercepted the vehicle near Route 9, but the truck vanished before officers arrived. The girl described the driver only briefly. Older white male, gray beard, staring without expression. Detectives believed Mercer tested police response times deliberately. And then another anonymous letter arrived, this time addressed directly to Detective Laura Vance. Inside sat a single newspaper clipping showing Emily Grayson's senior portrait. Across the image, someone typed 3 words using an old mechanical typewriter. She fought hard. No fingerprints. No saliva traces. Nothing usable. Yet tucked inside the envelope, investigators discovered one microscopic object, nearly invisible. Against the paper, another tiny blue plastic fragment. The same material haunting the case from the beginning. The message landed with horrifying clarity. Mercer was still close enough to touch the investigation whenever he wanted. And somewhere beyond the fear-consuming Black Hollow, the killer who terrorized the town for 30 years appeared to be enjoying every second of it. The 4th blue plastic fragment changed everything. Until that moment, investigators believed Daniel Mercer was running, hiding, improvising his survival while pressure tightened around him from every direction. But the letter sent directly to Detective Laura Vance revealed something far more disturbing. Mercer was not acting like prey. He was acting like a man still in control. He knew details only investigators understood. He followed media coverage obsessively. He remained close enough to Black Hollow to deliver evidence personally while police flooded surrounding counties. And worst of all, the line typed across Emily Grayson's photograph, "She fought hard," felt less like a threat and more like admiration. The psychological impact inside the task force became severe almost immediately. Detectives stopped sleeping normally. Several officers began carrying weapons, even while off duty. Vance herself noticed unfamiliar vehicles lingering near her apartment late at night. Those surveillance teams never confirmed Mercer's presence directly. Anonymous callers flooded the sheriff's department, claiming Mercer stood outside homes, watched playgrounds, followed women through grocery stores. Most reports collapsed under investigation. Some clearly came from frightened residents, seeing monsters in ordinary strangers. But Black Hollow's fear had become contagious again. Every older pickup truck triggered panic. Every dark roadside felt dangerous. Then the dogs found another grave. Search teams sweeping wooded land near the abandoned reservoir uncovered disturbed soil less than 200 yards from the original recovery site. Excavation revealed skeletal remains wrapped partially in industrial tarp material degraded by years. Underground. Female. Early 20s. One wrist fracture before death. The victim carried no identification, but investigators immediately noticed something chilling. A blue cargo restraint tab remained tangled inside the tarp folds near the ribcage. The same microscopic clue. Again, forensic artists reconstructed the victim's face while national databases searched for matches. Days later, investigators identified her as Melissa Crane, a waitress who vanished in 1992 while driving home from a roadside diner nearly 80 miles outside Black Hollow. Her disappearance received minimal attention originally because police suspected voluntary flight, connected to drug activity. But Melissa's family insisted for years she would never abandon her younger brother without explanation. Nobody listened long enough. Now she surfaced beneath wet earth tied to the same man connected to Emily and Rachel. The pattern became undeniable. Mercer hunted women traveling alone at night near isolated roads connected to freight corridors he understood intimately. He exploited darkness, distance, and small-town assumptions. And for decades he survived because no single police department saw the entire map. The FBI formally classified the case as a serial homicide investigation the next morning. National media exploded again. Cable news anchors called Black Hollow the burial ground of a hidden predator. Former residents returned to town carrying old suspicions and forgotten stories. Women contacted investigators describing terrifying encounters with Mercer stretching back nearly 20 years. One claimed he followed her home repeatedly after seeing her at a truck stop diner in 1991. Another remembered Mercer offering roadside assistance after she experienced tire trouble near Briar Lane before becoming enraged when she refused entering his vehicle. Then came the most disturbing witness statement so far. A retired dispatcher named Ellen Brody contacted Detective Vance privately after seeing Mercer's face on television. During emotional questioning, Brody admitted she buried information for nearly 15 years out of fear and guilt. In 1990, months after Emily Grayson's murder, Brody received a strange late-night emergency call from a terrified young woman whispering through heavy static. According to dispatch logs preserved in archives, the caller repeatedly said, "He keeps stopping the truck," before the line disconnected abruptly near county wetlands outside Black Hollow. Officers searched briefly that night, but found nothing. No missing persons report ever connected officially to the call. Brody never forgot the voice. Now she believed the caller may have been another victim trapped inside Mercer's freight vehicle. Detectives reopened every unidentified female missing persons case across 3 states between 1987 and 1995, searching for connections to freight routes and emergency calls. The scale became overwhelming. Hundreds of names, hundreds of photographs, young faces frozen forever at the age they vanished. Meanwhile, Mercer remained invisible. Authorities tracked possible sightings through Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, then suddenly Colorado. Every lead collapsed minutes before capture. Mercer seemed to understand law enforcement procedures almost instinctively. He abandoned vehicles frequently, used cash only, slept in campgrounds and industrial lots difficult to monitor consistently. Behavioral analysts warned the task force Mercer likely prepared mentally for eventual pursuit long before evidence surfaced publicly. He knew exactly how predators disappear because he spent years moving unnoticed through freight, systems, and forgotten roadside America. Then another body surfaced, this time much closer to home. A utility crew repairing drainage lines near Briar Lane discovered skeletal remains hidden inside a narrow concrete runoff tunnel less than half a mile from where Emily Grayson's abandoned car was. Found in 1989, investigators rushed to the scene expecting another historical victim. Instead, forensic evidence suggested the body had been there less than 3 months. The victim was 24-year-old Leah Porter, missing since spring, last seen leaving a highway bar 30 miles outside Black Hollow. The murder sent shockwaves through the investigation because Mercer was already believed to be on the run when Leah disappeared, meaning one horrifying possibility suddenly emerged. He never stopped killing. The tunnel scene looked disturbingly familiar to older detectives who worked Emily's case decades earlier. One shoe missing, blunt force trauma, signs of violent restraint. But this time investigators recovered something else from beneath Leah's fingernails. Fresh blue plastic fragments. Mercer was taunting them now, using the same industrial material almost like a signature left behind intentionally. Public fear spiraled beyond anything Black Hollow experienced before. Schools canceled evening activities entirely. Hardware stores sold out of firearms and locks within days. Vigilante groups formed online promising to hunt the monster themselves. Police worried innocent people might get hurt after several older men driving pickup trucks reported harassment and threats. Detective Vance understood the danger escalating psychologically around the town. But privately, another fear consumed her more heavily. Mercer's recent activity suggested increasing confidence, not desperation. Most fugitives avoid familiar territory after national exposure. Mercer returned repeatedly to Black Hollow instead. Why? The answer arrived unexpectedly through old freight manifests recovered from Black Hollow packaging. Archive. A records analyst discovered Mercer manipulated delivery schedules repeatedly during the early 90s to create unofficial overnight routes passing directly through isolated stretches near Briar Lane, the reservoir, and several locations connected to recovered victims. More importantly, one route included a rarely used maintenance warehouse outside town abandoned since 1998 after flood damage. Detectives obtained warrants immediately. The warehouse stood rotting beside railroad tracks overgrown with weeds and collapsed fencing. Windows shattered, rust-coating metal doors. The building looked dead from outside. Yet investigators noticed fresh tire tracks leading toward the rear loading entrance almost immediately. Someone had been there recently. Tactical units entered cautiously, expecting Mercer possibly inside. The warehouse smelled of mold, oil, and standing water. Then officers discovered the hidden room. Behind stacked freight pallets sat a narrow steel door welded partially into concrete walls. Inside, investigators found an improvised living space buried beneath darkness. Mattress, camping supplies, police scanners, newspaper clippings covering Emily, Rachel, Melissa, and Leah. Maps covered with handwritten notes. Women's photographs pinned across plywood walls. And hanging near the back corner sat dozens of blue cargo restraint tabs threaded together like trophies. The room froze everyone who entered, because Mercer had not simply hidden from Black Hollow for 30 years. He built a private shrine around the terror consuming the town. But the most horrifying discovery waited inside a rusted locker near the mattress. Detectives opened it expecting weapons. Instead, they found videotapes. Dozens of them, labeled only with dates. 1989, 1990, 1991, 1992, 1993, and one final tape marked just 3 days earlier with black permanent ink. Laura. Detective Vance reportedly stopped breathing for several seconds, staring at the label. Because suddenly the investigation no longer felt like detectives hunting a killer. It felt like the killer had been watching them the entire time. The warehouse fell silent after detectives discovered the videotapes. Nobody moved at first. Dust drifted slowly through flashlight beams while investigators stared at the rusted locker as if it might explode. Detective Laura Vance felt something cold settle in her stomach when she saw her own name written across the final cassette tape in jagged black marker. Laura, not Detective Vance, not officer, just Laura. Personal, familiar. Like Mercer wanted her to understand the distance between hunter and hunted had already disappeared. Federal agents secured the entire building immediately while evidence teams cataloged every object. Inside the hidden room, the walls looked less like a fugitive hideout and more like the inside of an obsession rotting quietly beneath the surface of Black Hollow for decades. Photographs of victims covered plywood panels in uneven rows. Some pictures came from newspapers. Others clearly did not. Emily Grayson walking through a grocery store parking lot carrying books. Rachel Dunn pumping gas alone at night. Melissa Crane laughing outside the diner where she worked before vanishing. Images taken from distances, through trees, across roads, from inside parked vehicles. Mercer had watched them long before they disappeared. In the center of the wall sat a single large photograph of Briar Lane taken during winter. Snowfall. Someone had carved words directly into the wood beneath it. They always stop here. Behavioral analysts studying the scene later described the room as a physical map of Mercer's psychology. The trophies, the routes, the photographs, the blue restraint tabs hanging like decorations from the ceiling. He did not see the murders as isolated acts of violence. He saw them as part of a system, a ritual built around control, fear, and surveillance. Then technicians began examining the videotapes. The oldest footage came from damaged VHS recordings dating back to the late 80s. Most showed roads filmed through vehicle windshields at night. Hours of silent driving through rain-soaked highways and isolated forests. Occasionally, Mercer's voice appeared quietly from behind the camera, muttering directions or timestamps. Investigators recognized several roads connected to victim disappearances immediately. Then the footage became darker. One tape from 1990 showed a terrified young woman sitting inside a parked truck crying while Mercer questioned her calmly off camera. Detectives could not identify the victim initially because portions of her face remained obscured by darkness and video distortion. She kept asking repeatedly to go home. Mercer responded softly, almost gently, telling her she should have listened sooner. The tape ended abruptly. No body connected to the woman had ever been recovered. Another recording showed Mercer driving slowly through Black Hollow at night, narrating details about residents without emotion. She lives alone, works late. Nobody checks that road. The footage terrified investigators because it revealed how methodically Mercer studied vulnerability inside the community for years. But everything changed when technicians inserted the tape labeled Laura. Detective Vance insisted on watching personally despite objections from FBI supervisors. The screen flickered alive. At first, nothing appeared except shaky footage from inside, a vehicle parked somewhere dark. Rain tapped against glass. Then, the camera slowly focused toward an apartment building entrance. Vance's apartment. The footage timestamp showed 2 nights earlier. Investigators watched in silence as the camera zoomed toward Vance, leaving her building carrying groceries before disappearing inside again. Mercer's breathing remained audible throughout the recording. Slow, calm, patient. Then his voice whispered from behind the camera. She's getting close. The screen cut to static. No threats. No demands. Just confirmation Mercer remained near enough to study investigators directly while the entire country hunted him. The task force escalated security immediately. Vance received round-the-clock protection despite protesting the decision. Authorities feared Mercer's obsession with the investigation might push him toward direct confrontation. Behavioral profilers warn serial offenders sometimes fixate on investigators who threaten their perceived control or legacy. The fact Mercer filmed Vance personally suggested the case had evolved psychologically for him, beyond simple escape. Then another clue surfaced inside the warehouse. Beneath loose floorboards, investigators discovered dozens of freight receipts and route logs dating back nearly 20 years. Most appeared meaningless initially until analysts noticed repeated handwritten symbols beside specific delivery locations. Cross-referencing the marks with missing persons databases produced horrifying results. Nearly every marked route aligned with an unsolved female disappearance. The map stretched across 4 states. The victim count potentially doubled overnight. Detectives realized Mercer may have operated undetected far longer than anyone imagined. Meanwhile, forensic teams processing the warehouse uncovered fresh cigarette butts and food packaging, proving Mercer occupied the space recently, likely within 48 hours before police arrived. That detail shook investigators deeply. They missed him by hours. Then came another terrifying realization. The warehouse sat less than 10 minutes from Black Hollow High School, Emily Grayson's school. The proximity felt intentional, as if Mercer spent decades living inside the shadow of his first confirmed murder. Public reaction spiraled violently once news leaked about the videotapes. National networks interrupted programming with special reports describing Mercer as one of the most elusive serial predators in recent American history. Residents flooded police stations demanding answers about whether more victims remained undiscovered. Families of missing women from neighboring states traveled to Black Hollow carrying photographs and DNA samples, hoping investigators might finally connect loved ones to Mercer's routes. And still Mercer remained invisible. Then the first direct communication arrived. At 1:14 a.m., Detective Vance's protected phone rang inside the temporary FBI command center. The number appeared blocked. Agents traced the signal unsuccessfully while Vance answered under supervision. For several seconds, only static filled the line. Then Mercer spoke. "You watched the tapes." Vance later described his voice as strangely calm, almost conversational. Agents signaled desperately for her to keep him talking while technicians attempted location. Tracing. Mercer continued before she answered. "You still don't understand, Emily." Vance demanded his location. Mercer ignored the question. "She wasn't afraid at first," he whispered. "That's what made her different." The room reportedly froze. Hearing the killer discuss Emily Grayson directly after 30 years transformed the investigation, instantly from theory into living nightmare. Vance pressed harder, asking about Rachel, Melissa, Leah, and the unidentified victims connected to the reservoir. Mercer laughed softly. "You only found the ones I left behind." Then the line disconnected. Technicians traced the call to another roadside payphone nearly 90 miles outside Black Hollow. Officers arrived too late again. Witnesses remembered only an older pickup truck leaving the area minutes earlier. But Mercer's statement echoed through the task force afterward. "The ones I left behind." Investigators feared the implication immediately. There were more victims, possibly many more. The search expanded nationwide. Federal databases cross-checked Mercer's freight routes against decades of unresolved disappearances, involving women between 17 and 30 years old. Analysts worked around the clock, building timelines, geographic overlaps, and behavioral patterns. The number of potential connections became staggering. 32 possible victims, maybe more. And hidden among the route logs from the warehouse, investigators uncovered one final disturbing detail. Several locations were circled repeatedly in red ink instead of black. One circle surrounded Briar Lane. Another marked the abandoned reservoir. And a third highlighted a remote section of forest outside Black Hollow, known locally as Dead Pine Ridge. Detectives reviewed maps carefully. Dead Pine Ridge contained no officially connected crime scenes. No recovered bodies. No known disappearances. Nothing. Which terrified them even more. Tactical teams entered the forest at sunrise with cadaver dogs, excavation crews, and federal agents moving slowly between dense trees and collapsed hunting paths. The woods felt ancient and silent beneath heavy fog. Searchers spread across miles of uneven terrain while helicopters scanned overhead. Then one dog alerted near a shallow depression hidden beneath fallen branches. Excavators began digging carefully. Within 30 minutes, they uncovered fabric. Then bone. Then another body. And another. Buried side by side beneath the roots. The horror spreading through the task force became impossible to contain because one truth emerged. Immediately from the excavation site, Daniel Mercer had not been improvising murder for 30 years. He had been building a graveyard. The excavation at Dead Pine Ridge continued for 9 straight days beneath floodlights and armed security while helicopters circled endlessly overhead. By the 3rd day, investigators stopped referring to the area as a burial site. They called it what it truly was, a dumping ground. The forest floor concealed horror layered across decades beneath roots, mud, and collapsing earth. Search teams uncovered bodies so close together in some areas that forensic anthropologists struggled separating remains during recovery. Young women, teenagers, some still wearing fragments of jewelry. Others wrapped partially in industrial tarp material identical to the coverings found near the reservoir. The deeper investigators dug, the darker the pattern became. Black Hollow descended into shock unlike anything in its history. National Guard vehicles blocked roads leading toward the forest because crowds gathered constantly, hoping for information about missing loved ones. Families arrived, carrying fading photographs from the 80s and 90s. Reporters broadcast live from outside police barricades while commentators called Dead Pine Ridge one of the most horrifying serial crime scenes uncovered in modern America. Yet inside the command center, investigators faced another terrifying realization quietly spreading through the task force. Not all the victims matched Mercer's known timeline. Some remains appeared older, much older. Forensic dating suggested at least one body may have been buried before Emily Grayson's murder in 1989 by several years. Detectives suddenly feared Mercer's violence began long before Black Hollow even knew his name. Meanwhile, the killer himself remained free. That fact poisoned every moment of the investigation. Detectives processing graves worked armed at all times because nobody could guarantee Mercer wasn't watching from somewhere beyond the trees. Behavioral analysts warned the ongoing discoveries likely triggered emotional reactions in him, ranging from rage to excitement. Serial offenders who construct hidden burial grounds often return psychologically to those spaces. Repeatedly, Dead Pine Ridge was not random disposal terrain. It mattered to Mercer personally. Then investigators uncovered the hidden camera. A forensic technician noticed unnatural reflection inside a hollow tree overlooking portions of the excavation site. Officers approached cautiously and discovered a small weatherproof surveillance camera buried within. The trunk connected to modern recording equipment powered by portable batteries. Someone had been monitoring the recovery operation. Recently, technicians pulled partial fingerprint from the equipment almost immediately. Daniel Mercer. The discovery sent a wave of panic through law enforcement. Mercer was close enough to revisit the graveyard after police secured the area, maybe even during excavation itself. Tactical units swept surrounding woods aggressively, but found nothing except fresh cigarette ashes near a ridge overlooking the command tents. He was hunting the investigation now. Then another tape surfaced. This one arrived through overnight mail addressed directly to Black Hollow Sheriff's Department. Unlike previous cassettes, the package contained no fingerprints or identifying marks. Investigators played the footage inside a sealed conference room crowded with federal agents, profilers, and exhausted detectives. The screen flickered alive, showing darkness at first. Then flashlight beams. Forest. Heavy breathing. The camera moved slowly through Dead Pine Ridge, sometime before police discovered the graves. Mercer narrated softly while filming disturbed patches of earth around him. They stopped screaming eventually. Several investigators reportedly walked out immediately. The footage continued. Mercer pointed the camera toward crude wooden markers hammered into the ground throughout the woods. Most contained numbers instead of names. Others displayed objects hanging from nails. A necklace, a shoe, a bracelet. Trophies exposed briefly through shaking flashlight beams before darkness swallowed them again. Then Mercer stopped walking. the camera tilted downward toward freshly turned soil. "There's one you missed," he whispered. The tape ended. Search teams returned to the exact area visible in the footage within hours. After intense excavation, they uncovered another grave containing remains of a teenage girl wrapped in plastic sheeting. A newspaper fragment buried with the body dated October 1989, weeks after Emily Grayson's murder. Detectives began wondering whether Mercer accelerated his killings after realizing he escaped. Suspicion the first time. And then came the identification that broke the town emotionally. Dental records confirmed one set of remains belonged to Alicia Vane, a 16-year-old Black Hollow runaway who vanished in 1986. For years, locals assumed Alicia left voluntarily after conflicts at home. Her case received minimal investigation because authorities believed she drifted into drug culture beyond county lines. Instead, she spent nearly 20 years buried beneath Dead Pine Ridge. The revelation devastated the community because it exposed how easily vulnerable girls disappeared, without urgency, when their lives looked complicated from the outside. Alicia's younger brother appeared on national television, crying while holding childhood photographs, and asking one question repeatedly. How many times did people see him and do nothing? Investigators asked themselves the same thing. As Mercer's timeline expanded, witness memories resurfaced everywhere. Women remembered strange encounters once dismissed as uncomfortable but harmless. A cashier recalled Mercer sitting silently inside his truck outside her workplace for hours during winter nights. Former freight employees described him growing increasingly obsessed with newspaper stories about missing women through the 90s. One mechanic remembered Mercer asking bizarre questions about how long fingerprints survived in mud. After heavy rain, the monster had always been there. Ordinary, visible, hidden behind routine. Then the investigation took another terrifying turn. Forensic examination of the newest bodies from Dead Pine Ridge revealed traces of recent disturbance. On one grave less than 6 months old, detectives initially assumed animals or weather damaged the burial site. But closer analysis exposed something horrifying. The grave had been reopened intentionally. From the outside, someone dug into it recently and removed something. Investigators feared Mercer returned to retrieve evidence after media coverage intensified. But what exactly? Trophies? Personal items? Bodies? Nobody knew. Then Detective Laura Vance noticed another detail while reviewing recovery photographs from the site. Several graves aligned unnaturally in curved patterns. Not random placement. Organized. Aerial drone footage confirmed it. The burial sites formed rough, concentric circles spreading outward through sections of the forest. Like rings. At the center sat a clearing investigators initially overlooked because no graves appeared visible. There. Search teams entered the clearing immediately. The ground looked untouched. Yet cadaver dogs reacted violently the moment they approached. Excavation crews began digging near the center marker shortly after sunset. For feet down, they struck concrete. Workers uncovered a sealed underground storage bunker hidden beneath Dead Pine Ridge for decades. Rusted steel doors protected the entrance beneath layers of earth and vegetation. The structure appeared professionally built, likely using old industrial materials connected to freight construction sites. Nobody spoke while tactical teams opened the doors. The smell hit first. Oat. Moisture. Decay trapped underground for years. Flashlights revealed shelves lining concrete walls filled with boxes, photographs, clothing, identification cards, cassette recordings, and hundreds of newspaper clippings documenting disappearances across multiple states. Investigators described the bunker later as a physical archive of Mercer's crimes, a museum dedicated to terror. Then they discovered the photographs. Thousands of them. Victims sleeping. Victims driving. Victims entering stores. Women standing alone at gas stations, unaware someone watched nearby. And near the back wall, investigators uncovered a series of recent photographs taken only weeks earlier. Detective Laura Vance. Leaving restaurants. Driving home. Standing outside the sheriff's department. Mercer had not simply fixated on the investigation. He selected a new target. The bunker held another surprise, too. A detailed map of Black Hollow marked with colored pins and handwritten dates extending far beyond. Known victims. Some pins corresponded to confirmed disappearances. Others matched women still alive. Potential victims. Mercer planned ahead constantly, even after 30 years, even while hunted nationwide. Then one final discovery inside the bunker froze everyone present. Tucked beneath stacks of photographs sat a fresh Polaroid picture taken less than 48 hours earlier. The image showed a woman bound inside a dark room, staring directly at the camera with terror in her eyes. Investigators identified her immediately. 21-year-old college student Hannah Price. Reported missing just 2 days before. And scrawled across the bottom of the photograph in black ink were 6 words that changed the investigation completely. You're finally looking in the right place. The photograph of Hannah Price detonated through the command center like a bomb. Detectives who spent months excavating decades-old graves suddenly faced a horrifying reality. Crashing into the present tense. Daniel Mercer was not only alive. He was active, hunting, watching, escalating. Somewhere beyond the floodlights surrounding Dead Pine Ridge, a 21-year-old woman might still be breathing while one of the most terrifying fugitives in the country studied police movements in real time. The task force shifted instantly from recovery operation to emergency rescue mission. Hannah Price disappeared 48 hours earlier after leaving evening classes at North Valley Community College, 60 miles east of Black Hollow. At the time, local police assumed voluntary disappearance, initially because Hannah recently argued with her boyfriend and occasionally stayed away from home without warning. But after investigators discovered her photograph inside Mercer's underground bunker, every assumption collapsed. Detective Laura Vance reviewed Hannah's timeline obsessively through the night. At 8:17 p.m., surveillance cameras captured Hannah exiting the campus library carrying textbooks and coffee. At 8:31, she stopped at a gas station near Route 14. After that, nothing. Her car surfaced abandoned early the next morning near an isolated service road lined with pine forest 20 miles outside town. Driver's side, door open. Purse left behind. One shoe missing. The pattern returned again with terrifying precision. Investigators flooded the region immediately. Roadblocks expanded across 3 states. Helicopters searched highways nonstop, while FBI behavioral analysts studied Mercer's known habits, searching for likely holding locations. Unlike many impulsive killers, Mercer demonstrated patience and ritual. He watched victims beforehand, chose environnement carefully, preserved trophies, controlled movement. And now, for the first time publicly, investigators believed he sometimes kept victims alive temporarily before murder. The implications sickened everyone. Then another package arrived, this time delivered directly to a local television station covering the investigation. Security staff opened the envelope during live newsroom operations and found a VHS tape alongside a typed message. She still has time. Authorities seized the footage immediately. The video began with static before revealing Hannah Price sitting against concrete walls inside a dimly lit room. Her wrists appeared bound behind her back, one side of her face bruised. She looked terrified but alive. A newspaper dated 2 days earlier rested beside her, proving recent recording. Then Mercer's voice emerged calmly from behind the camera. Tell them what happens when girls ignore warnings. Hannah cried silently for several seconds before whispering, "Please help me." Mercer interrupted immediately. "No, tell them the truth." The footage ended abruptly. The nation erupted. Cable networks interrupted regular programming. Federal agencies poured additional resources into the search while terrified residents across Black Hollow locked themselves indoors before sunset. Hotline operators received thousands of calls from people convinced they spotted Mercer everywhere, from truck stops to campgrounds. But the tape revealed something critically important. The concrete wall behind Hannah contained faded industrial markings, partially visible near exposed piping. Investigators identified the structure within hours. An abandoned Cold War-era flood control station buried near the river system outside Black Hollow. Tactical units mobilized immediately. The raid began before dawn under freezing rain. Armored vehicles surrounded the isolated structure while helicopters circled overhead, illuminating broken concrete entrances through fog. Officers breached simultaneously from 3 directions, expecting armed confrontation. Instead, they found emptiness. The underground chambers smelled damp and abandoned. Old machinery rusted beneath leaking pipes. Dust covered most surfaces untouched for years. Then officers discovered the chair. Metal restraints attached to armrests. Fresh blood. A half-empty water bottle. And taped to the wall nearby sat another Polaroid photograph. Hannah Price staring into the camera beside that morning's newspaper. Still alive, but no longer there. Mercer had anticipated the raid. Again, the realization devastated investigators psychologically because it confirmed what many already feared privately. Mercer monitored law enforcement movements almost constantly, maybe through scanners, maybe through surveillance, maybe through something worse. Every time authorities moved aggressively, he moved first. Then Detective Vance noticed another detail inside the flood station. A small battery-powered radio sat near the restraints, quietly playing police frequencies through static. Mercer listened to them coming. Forensic teams processing the scene uncovered recent fingerprints belonging to Hannah, but almost nothing from Mercer himself. He cleaned surfaces meticulously. Yet one investigator found something strange hidden behind exposed piping near the chair. A child's bracelet. Pink beads. Tiny silver charm shaped like a star. Detectives traced the bracelet quickly. It belonged to Olivia Reed. Missing since 1994. Age 11. The room reportedly fell silent after the identification because until that moment Mercer's confirmed victims remained mostly young women and older teenagers. Olivia changed the profile entirely. The horror widened again. Then came another break. Traffic cameras captured a dark pickup truck resembling Mercer's vehicle crossing a toll bridge. 3 hours before the failed raid. Image quality remained poor, but analysts enhanced one frame enough to reveal something chilling in the passenger seat. A young woman's silhouette, head lowered, possibly restrained. The timeline suggested Hannah was alive during transport. Investigators intensified searches along Mercer's likely route patterns while behavioral profilers focused increasingly on geography connected emotionally to his crimes. Mercer repeatedly returned to symbolic locations: Briar Lane, Dead Pine Ridge, industrial freight corridors, places tied psychologically to control and memory. Then an FBI analyst made a disturbing observation. Every major Mercer crime scene connected loosely to water. Creeks, reservoirs, drainage systems, flood channels. Even Briar Lane crossed marshland runoff areas. The analyst believed water mattered symbolically to Mercer somehow. Cleansing, concealment, rebirth. Nobody knew exactly. But when investigators overlaid his routes against abandoned water infrastructure maps from the 80s, one location stood out immediately: Black Hollow Water Treatment Facility Number 3. Closed since 1991 after contamination problems. Remote. Partially underground. Surrounded by forest. And less than 15 minutes from where Emily Grayson disappeared. Tactical teams prepared another operation immediately. But before they moved, Detective Vance received another phone call. Blocked number. Static first. Then Mercer breathing quietly. "You're making them nervous," he whispered. Vance demanded Hannah's location. Mercer ignored the question again. Emily cried less than the others. The room monitoring the call reportedly froze. Vance kept him talking while technicians traced desperately. Mercer continued softly. She kept asking why nobody stopped to help. Then his voice changed slightly for the first time. Anger. They always drove away. The profiler observing beside Vance suddenly realized something critical. Mercer's crimes were not fueled purely by violence or domination. They revolved around rejection, humiliation, invisibility. He selected isolated roads intentionally because passing strangers never intervened. The call lasted 72 seconds before disconnecting. Long enough for partial triangulation. The signal originated near the abandoned treatment facility. SWAT units launched immediately. The facility loomed from darkness like a dead industrial fortress half swallowed by forest. Concrete towers rose above stagnant water pools while rusted fencing collapsed beneath overgrown weeds. Rain hammered tactical vehicles as officers breached entrances simultaneously. Inside, they found evidence everywhere. Fresh food wrappers, bedding, police scanners, blue restraint tabs. And hidden beneath the main filtration chamber, investigators discovered another underground room, accessible through maintenance tunnels. The smell hit first. Bleach, moisture, fear. Then officers heard movement. A scream. SWAT teams rushed deeper through concrete corridors until flashlights landed on Hannah Price chained beside exposed piping near the back wall. Alive, terrified, dehydrated, but alive. Paramedics reached her within seconds. Then gunfire exploded somewhere above them. Mercer. Officers stormed upward through maintenance stairs while alarms echoed through the facility. Witnesses later described hearing shouting followed by multiple shots outside near the drainage channels. But when tactical teams reached the surface, Daniel Mercer was already gone again. He disappeared into storm-dark forest beyond the treatment plant while helicopters searched overhead. Through pounding rain. Yet this time he left something behind. Near a shattered side exit, investigators recovered Mercer's jacket abandoned during escape. Inside, detectives found ammunition, maps, and a small cassette recorder still running. The tape contained only one message spoken calmly into static. "You still haven't found the first one." Detective Vance replayed the sentence repeatedly afterward. The first one. Not Emily. Not Rachel. Someone earlier. Someone buried deeper beneath 30 years of fear and silence. And somewhere inside the darkness surrounding Black Hollow, investigators realized the true beginning of Mercer's nightmare still remained hidden. The words from Mercer's recorder spread through the task force like poison. "You still haven't found the first one." Detectives replayed the message, endlessly searching for hidden meaning in his tone, his pacing. Even the faint background noises buried beneath static. Some investigators believed Mercer was manipulating them again, throwing attention toward imaginary victims to maintain psychological control after Hannah Price escaped alive. But others fear the obvious explanation. Emily Grayson was never the beginning. The possibility changed everything. For months, investigators believed they were excavating the evolution of a killer whose violence escalated across the late 80s and 90s. But if Mercer already murdered before Emily, then Black Hollow never witnessed the birth of the nightmare. It witnessed the moment the nightmare became visible. Detective Laura Vance reopened every unsolved disappearance connected to Mercer's early life. Immediately, childhood towns, former jobs, military records, juvenile incidents, every forgotten complaint, and police contact stretching back decades. The deeper investigators dug, the darker Mercer's history became. Born in 1946 outside rural Missouri, Mercer grew up near isolated farmland and floodplains where several teenage girls disappeared during the 60s under circumstances never fully resolved. At the time, authorities blamed runaways or transient workers moving through agricultural routes. But one cold case file caught investigators instantly. 16-year-old Eleanor Shaw, missing July 1968. Last seen walking home after evening shift at a roadside diner. One shoe recovered near drainage ditch. No body ever found. The parallels chilled everyone. Then forensic genealogists examining Mercer's abandoned jacket uncovered another critical clue. Hidden in fabric fibers. Traces of rare industrial algae contamination linked specifically to older wastewater filtration. Systems built before 1970. Analysts cross-referenced the chemical signature against infrastructure maps connected to Mercer's early employment records. One location matched perfectly. A decommissioned flood tunnel network beneath Mercer's hometown in Missouri. Federal agents moved quickly. Local authorities guided investigators through rusted maintenance corridors sealed for decades. Beneath abandoned industrial blocks, water dripped constantly through darkness while search teams advanced carefully between collapsing concrete chambers. Then cadaver dogs alerted near a collapsed tunnel wall buried beneath debris. Excavation crews uncovered human remains less than 4 hours later. Female. Teenager. 1960s clothing remnants. Dental records eventually confirmed the victim was Eleanor Shaw, dead for 38 years. And wrapped around one wrist, investigators discovered something tiny trapped beneath decayed fabric. A faded blue plastic fragment. The discovery detonated nationally because it proved Mercer's murders stretched back nearly 4 decades before capture. The scale became almost impossible psychologically. Entire generations lived and died while Mercer moved quietly between towns carrying secrets beneath ordinary routines. But the deeper horror came from Eleanor's autopsy findings. Unlike later victims, Eleanor survived captivity for days before death. Investigators realized Mercer refined his methods gradually over decades. The killer haunting Black Hollow evolved through practice. Meanwhile, Hannah Price remained under federal protection, recovering from severe psychological trauma. After rescue from the treatment facility, initially doctors believed she could provide only fragmented information because of shock and dehydration. Then, during an overnight interview with Detective Vance, Hannah revealed something that stunned the task force completely. Mercer talked constantly, not random threats. Stories. According to Hannah, Mercer described victims almost like memories from another life. He remembered details obsessively. Favorite songs, clothing, conversations. One moment especially disturbed investigators. Hannah recalled Mercer staring at her silently for several minutes before whispering, "You laugh like the girl from the bridge." The girl from the bridge. No victim in Mercer's known timeline matched that description. Another missing person. Another ghost. And then Hannah revealed the most terrifying detail yet. Mercer repeatedly mentioned someone helping him long ago. A man named Walter. The room reportedly fell silent. For years, investigators assumed Mercer operated entirely alone. But Hannah insisted Mercer described Walter almost nostalgically while ranting during captivity. He knew how to keep girls quiet, Mercer allegedly told her. He understood before everybody else ruined things. Detectives reopened Mercer's early history again, searching for anyone named Walter connected to freight routes, industrial work, or disappearances. They found him buried inside old employment records from Missouri. Walter Griggs, former maintenance supervisor, arrested repeatedly during the 70s for violence against women, but never convicted of homicide. Dead since 1981. Investigators unearthed forgotten police reports describing Griggs and Mercer drinking together, regularly near flood tunnels where Eleanor Shaw disappeared decades earlier. Witnesses once described them as creepy, inseparable. The case darkened beyond imagination, because now authorities feared Mercer may not have learned violence alone. He inherited it. Then another horrifying clue surfaced from the underground bunker at Dead Pine Ridge. Forensic technicians restoring water-damaged photographs uncovered one image partially hidden, beneath others inside a sealed evidence box. The picture showed a very young Daniel Mercer standing beside an older man investigators identified immediately as Walter Griggs. Between them stood a terrified teenage girl nobody recognized. Alive. The timestamp on the photograph dated 1971. The girl was never identified in missing persons databases. Another unknown victim. Another buried life. The body count surrounding Mercer continued expanding while investigators struggled simply to keep pace with the dead. Then came the break everyone feared eventually. A state trooper outside Nebraska spotted Mercer's pickup truck parked near an isolated rest stop at 3:11 a.m. Officers approached cautiously after confirming the plate through national databases. But before backup arrived, Mercer opened fire suddenly from inside the vehicle. The gun battle lasted less than 40 seconds. Mercer escaped on foot into nearby woodland after wounding one officer in the shoulder. Inside the abandoned truck, investigators discovered maps, weapons, false identification documents, and a blood-stained Polaroid camera. But the most disturbing discovery waited beneath the passenger seat. Fresh photographs. Women. Recent. A grocery clerk. A college student jogging near campus. A waitress locking a diner after closing. Mercer was still selecting targets, even while hunted nationwide. In one photograph froze Detective Vance completely when agents faxed copies to the command center. The image showed Vance herself pumping gas at a station outside Black Hollow 2 days earlier. Mercer remained close. Always. Then forensic analysts processing Mercer's truck found traces of another person's DNA inside the passenger compartment. Female. Recent. Not Hannah Price. Authorities panicked immediately. Another victim. Possibly alive. The DNA matched 23-year-old Savannah Cole, reported missing only 36 hours earlier from a highway motel in Kansas. Surveillance footage showed Savannah entering Mercer's truck voluntarily after apparently asking for roadside assistance during heavy rain. The timeline terrified investigators because it meant Mercer abducted another woman almost immediately after escaping the treatment facility raid. The hunt intensified across multiple states. Behavioral profilers warned Mercer's control was collapsing rapidly under pressure. Escalating offenders nearing capture often become reckless, emotional, and significantly more dangerous. But Detective Vance believed something else entirely. Mercer wasn't running randomly. He was heading somewhere specific. The clue emerged unexpectedly from old cassette recordings recovered inside the bunker. While reviewing background noises beneath Mercer's monologues, audio technicians isolated recurring sounds appearing across tapes recorded decades apart. Train horns, river water, industrial machinery, and church bells. Cross-referencing the sounds against Mercer's historical movements revealed one location matching perfectly. Ash Creek. a dying industrial town near the Missouri border where Mercer and Walter Griggs once worked freight yards together during the 70s. More importantly, Ash Creek contains something investigators had overlooked until now: an abandoned rail bridge locals called Hollow Span. The bridge where 16-year-old Eleanor Shaw was reportedly last seen alive before disappearing in 1968. Detective Vance understood immediately. Mercer was going home, and somewhere beyond the collapsing factories and poisoned riverbanks of Ash Creek, another young woman might already be trapped inside the final chapter of a nightmare stretching back nearly 40 years. Ash Creek looked like a town abandoned halfway through dying. Rusted factories leaned beside poisoned riverbanks beneath permanent gray skies, while empty. Storefronts collapsed slowly along streets littered with broken glass and weeds. Freight trains still thundered occasionally through the center of town, but most residents left years earlier after the mills shut down. Those who remained lived beside ghosts, and somewhere inside that decaying industrial maze, investigators believed Daniel Mercer was hiding with another abducted woman while the largest manhunt in the country closed around him. Federal agents flooded Ash Creek before sunrise. Roadblocks sealed highways in every direction while helicopters swept rail yards and drainage. Tunnels connected to Mercer's past employment records. Tactical teams moved building by building through abandoned warehouses and riverfront factories, carrying photographs of Savannah Cole, the missing 23-year-old whose DNA surfaced inside Mercer's truck days earlier. Detective Laura Vance arrived shortly after dawn, carrying decades of files compressed into one terrible realization. Mercer always returned emotionally to the beginning: Briar Lane, Dead Pine Ridge, the reservoir, the flood station, every location tied somehow to memory and ritual. Ash Creek was different from Black Hollow in one critical way. This was where Mercer became what he was, and Hollow Span Bridge stood at the center of it. The bridge stretched above Black River water like a rusted skeleton left behind by another century. Local legends surrounding the structure dated back decades: suicides, disappearances, strange lights at night. Teenagers dared each other to walk across the tracks after dark because older residents whispered. The bridge remembered things. Most dismissed the stories as small-town folklore. Detectives no longer laughed at folklore, especially after search teams discovered fresh tire tracks leading towards service roads beneath the bridge less than 2 hours after arriving. The first structure investigators searched was an abandoned rail maintenance shed overlooking the river. Inside, they found recent food wrappers, cigarette ashes, and blankets still warm. Mercer missed them again by minutes, but he left another message, spray painted across the wall in huge black letters. They never looked down. The phrase disturbed Vance instantly because Mercer repeated similar language before regarding roads: water, tunnels, hidden places people passed without noticing. She ordered search teams toward the river immediately. Divers entered freezing water beneath Hollow Span, while sonar crews scanned submerged wreckage from decades of industrial dumping. Then one diver surfaced screaming for medics. He discovered skeletal remains tangled inside collapsed metal debris beneath the bridge. Female. Teenage. Still wearing fragments of a yellow diner uniform preserved partially by river mud. Dental records later confirmed the body belonged to Eleanor Shaw's co-worker, Denise Marrow, who vanished 3 weeks after Eleanor disappeared in 1968. The revelation stunned investigators. Mercer and Walter Griggs likely killed together, multiple times, long before Black Hollow ever feared the name Daniel Mercer. The river search expanded rapidly. By nightfall, divers recovered 2 additional sets of remains beneath Hollow Span connected to disappearances from the 70s. The bridge had hidden bodies for nearly 40 years beneath black industrial water while trains passed overhead every day. Then Savannah Cole's backpack surfaced near the shoreline. Fresh, still dry inside. Detectives realized Mercer remained nearby. Very nearby. Tactical teams swept tunnel systems running beneath the old freight district while behavioral. Analysts studied Mercer's psychological patterns, obsessively searching for the next move. One profiler made a disturbing observation that changed the direction of the hunt immediately. Mercer escalated communication whenever emotionally cornered. Letters, tapes, phone calls, messages at crime scenes. And now investigators cut off most escape routes surrounding Ash Creek, meaning Mercer would likely reach out again soon. The prediction proved correct less than 4 hours later. At 11:26 p.m., emergency dispatchers received a radio interruption overriding multiple police frequencies simultaneously. Static exploded across communications before Mercer's voice emerged calmly through every patrol car. Speaker in the county. You still don't understand why they stopped. Officers across Ash Creek reportedly froze hearing the voice echo through radios beneath heavy rain. Mercer continued. They trusted people. That's why. Detective Vance grabbed a transmitter, immediately demanding Savannah's location. Mercer ignored the question. They stood beside roads waiting for help because nobody teaches girls what monsters look like. The profiler beside Vance suddenly realized Mercer viewed himself less as predator than punisher. In his mind, the victims failed some invisible test of caution or loyalty. The murders justified themselves through twisted logic built over decades of resentment and control. Then Mercer whispered something that chilled the room completely. Emily almost escaped. Static swallowed the transmission before anyone answered. The statement haunted investigators immediately because Mercer rarely discussed operational details, directly unless emotionally significant. If Emily nearly escaped, where? How? And from what? Then Vance remembered something buried deep inside original case files from 1989. A witness statement ignored for years. An elderly trucker once reported seeing a young blonde woman running barefoot near Hollow Span Bridge around midnight shortly after Emily Grayson disappeared. Police dismissed the sighting originally because it occurred nearly 90 miles from Black Hollow and contradicted known timelines. Now everything changed. Investigators believed Mercer abducted Emily near Briar Lane, transported her toward Ash Creek through freight routes, and lost control temporarily when she attempted escape near Hollow Span, meaning Emily's final hours lasted far longer than anyone realized. The truth devastated the task force psychologically. She fought, ran, tried surviving. And somewhere inside Ash Creek, Mercer still carried obsession with that night decades later. Then came another break. A railroad worker contacted authorities after recognizing Mercer from television. According to the worker, an older man matching Mercer's appearance forced entry recently into abandoned pump control tunnels beneath the riverfront. The tunnel system connected directly to drainage channels beneath Hollow Span Bridge. SWAT teams moved immediately. The tunnels descended beneath Ash Creek like buried arteries, flooded partially with stagnant water and rust. Darkness swallowed flashlight beams after only a few yards while distant train vibrations echoed constantly overhead. Tactical officers advanced slowly through narrow concrete corridors marked by decades of graffiti and flood damage. Then they found the chains, bolted into walls, fresh scratches on concrete, medical supplies, women's clothing, and farther inside, investigators discovered a small room lit by battery lanterns where Savannah Cole sat handcuffed to exposed piping, alive but barely conscious. Paramedics reached her within seconds. She kept repeating one sentence through tears. He said this was where it started. Mercer heard officers coming moments before entry. Surveillance footage later revealed he escaped through secondary drainage tunnels minutes before. SWAT reached Savannah again, but this time he left something else behind. Inside the tunnel room, detectives found old photographs pinned across concrete walls dating back to the 60s. Eleanor Shaw, Denise Merrow, unknown girls, early victims from Mercer and Walter Griggs' years in Ash Creek. At the center hung one final image. Emily Grayson, alive, terrified, standing barefoot near Hollow Span Bridge while rain poured around her. The timestamp read October 17, 1989, hours before her death. Scrawled beneath the photograph in Mercer's handwriting were 5 words investigators would never forget. She should have kept running. The image shattered Detective Laura Vance emotionally because for the first time investigators saw Emily not as a body beside Briar Lane or a smiling yearbook photograph frozen before tragedy. They saw the final living terror in her eyes while she stood trapped beside a river bridge 90. Miles from home, trying desperately to survive a monster nobody understood yet. And somewhere beyond the tunnels beneath Ash Creek, Daniel Mercer remained free for one more night. The photograph of Emily Grayson standing barefoot beside Hollow Span Bridge became the emotional center of the entire investigation overnight. For 30 years, Black Hollow imagined her final moments through fragmented evidence, rumors, and courtroom-style theories built from bloodstains and timelines. But now detectives stared directly into the terror frozen across her face while rain blurred the edges of the image. She was alive when Mercer photographed her, exhausted, frightened, trying to survive. And the words scrawled beneath the picture, "She should have kept running," revealed something darker than cruelty. Regret. Mercer did not simply remember Emily. He relived her. Constantly. Behavioral profilers concluded Emily Grayson represented psychological turning point in Mercer's evolution. Before Emily, his crimes remained hidden in drifting industrial towns and forgotten highways where victims vanished quietly beneath weak investigations. But Emily transformed the killings into obsession. She fought back harder, escaped temporarily, forced him to improvise publicly. Her murder terrified Black Hollow so completely that Mercer spent decades feeding emotionally on the fear left behind. And now the investigation itself became personal war. Savannah Cole survived long enough to provide investigators the clearest description of Mercer's behavior ever recorded. During interviews conducted under federal protection, she described Mercer as calm one moment and violently emotional the next. He watched news coverage obsessively through portable radios. He spoke to victims for hours as though explaining lessons nobody else understood. According to Savannah, Mercer repeatedly claimed the police were too late from the beginning. Then she revealed the detail that changed the hunt entirely. Mercer kept talking about the house. Not Ash Creek. Not Black Hollow. A house. He said he wanted to end it where he learned everything, Savannah whispered during questioning. Detective Laura Vance immediately reopened files connected to Walter Griggs. Old tax records revealed Griggs once owned remote property outside Ash Creek near collapsed farmland, abandoned after flooding in the 70s. The location sat miles beyond paved roads hidden among dead trees and ruined irrigation canals. Aerial surveillance detected something else. Fresh vehicle tracks leading toward the property. Tactical teams mobilized before dawn. Rain-hammered armored vehicles moving through mud while helicopters circled low above dying farmland. Swallowed by fog, the house emerged slowly from darkness like something rotting beneath memory itself. Two-story structure. Windows boarded unevenly. Porch collapsed partially inward. Rusted farming equipment scattered across overgrown fields. Detective Vance felt immediate dread stepping onto the property because the atmosphere carried something beyond abandonment. History. The house looked preserved psychologically rather than physically, as if Mercer protected it in secret for decades. SWAT units breached, carefully expecting armed confrontation. The smell inside stopped several officers cold. Mold, dust, decay, and beneath everything else, bleach. The walls were covered in photographs. Not newspaper clippings. Original photographs. Dozens upon dozens of young women pinned across every room, stretching back nearly 40 years. Some victims smiled, unaware they were being watched. Others appeared terrified, restrained, injured. The collection documented Mercer's entire evolution from predator to serial murderer. Then investigators discovered the basement. Concrete stairs descended beneath the house into darkness, while distant water dripped rhythmically. Somewhere below, tactical lights swept across old furniture, chains, ropes, recording equipment, and industrial restraints attached permanently into walls. This was where it started. Not the roads, not the bridge, not Black Hollow. Here, Mercer learned violence beneath this house alongside Walter Griggs decades earlier while the outside world remained blind. Forensic teams uncovered horrifying evidence almost immediately. Blood traces dating across multiple decades, fibers matching known victims, hidden compartments containing jewelry, identification cards, cassette recordings, and handwritten journals documenting abductions in meticulous detail. Then Detective Vance opened a locked filing cabinet near the back wall. Inside sat dozens of notebooks. Mercer's diaries. The earliest entry dated 1967. The contents sickened investigators. Mercer described victims clinically at first. Locations, times, behavior. But over years, the writing transformed into obsession and resentment directed toward women. Strangers, police, entire communities. He blamed victims for trusting people, blamed towns for ignoring danger, blamed society for humiliations nobody else even remembered. And then Vance found Emily's section. Nearly 300 pages. Detailed descriptions of the night she disappeared. The chase near Hollow Span. The moment she escaped temporarily from the truck. How she begged passing drivers for help. How nobody stopped. Detectives reading the journals reportedly broke down emotionally because Mercer documented every terrifying second from his perspective with horrifying clarity. Emily ran through rain beside the highway, bleeding from shattered feet after losing her shoe during escape. At least 3 vehicles passed according to Mercer's writing. None stopped. One driver allegedly slowed briefly before accelerating away. Mercer became fixated on that moment for decades afterward. She learned the truth, he wrote repeatedly. Nobody wants trouble. Then came the entry that shattered the investigation completely. Mercer claimed Walter Griggs murdered the very first victim while Mercer watched as a teenager. According to the journals, Griggs manipulated Mercer for years afterward, teaching him how to select isolated victims, conceal bodies, and exploit jurisdiction gaps between towns. The cycle began long before Mercer acted alone. Then officers upstairs shouted suddenly through radios. Moving outside. Thermal drones detected a single figure moving through tree lines behind the property, carrying what appeared to be a rifle. Mercer. Tactical teams flooded outdoors immediately while helicopters redirected above the fields. Gunfire erupted near irrigation trenches as Mercer fired toward advancing officers before, disappearing into dense woodland behind the farmhouse. The pursuit intensified violently. Officers chased Mercer through collapsing barns and flooded drainage canals while helicopters illuminated the darkness overhead. Witnesses later described the scene like war unfolding across dead farmland. Then Mercer vanished again. until one deputy spotted movement near an abandoned grain silo overlooking the property. SWAT units surrounded the structure carefully. Inside, high above the ground near rusted support beams, Daniel Mercer stood holding a shotgun while floodlights illuminated decades of exhaustion carved across his face. For the first time since the investigation exploded nationally, the killer finally looked old. Not mythical, not invisible. Old. Mercer stared downward silently while negotiators pleaded for surrender. Then his eyes locked onto Detective Laura Vance, standing near armored vehicles below. "You found Emily," he said quietly. Vance demanded he drop the weapon. Mercer ignored her. She was stronger than the others. The entire scene reportedly froze. Because despite decades of murder and terror, Mercer still spoke about Emily like she remained trapped alive somewhere inside his mind. Vance stepped forward carefully. "You could have stopped," she told him. Mercer laughed softly. "No," he answered. "Walter started it. Emily finished it." Then he raised the shotgun suddenly toward officers below. Gunfire exploded across the silo. Mercer disappeared backward over rusted railings as bullets shattered metal around him. Officers rushed inside, expecting another escape route. Instead, they found Daniel Mercer broken across concrete several stories below after plunging through. Collapsed support beams during the shootout. Barely alive. Paramedics stabilized him while helicopters prepared emergency transport under heavy guard. Detectives surrounded the scene in stunned silence, watching medics load the man who haunted Black Hollow for 30 years into an ambulance. Then Mercer grabbed Detective Vance's sleeve weakly before doors closed. Blood filled his mouth when he whispered his final sentence. "There's one more under the water." The ambulance doors slammed shut. And for the first time since Emily Grayson vanished in 1989, investigators realized the nightmare still was not over. Daniel Mercer survived the fall for 3 hours. 3 hours. After 40 years of buried bodies, vanished names, forgotten highways, and nightmares stretched across generations, the man who turned entire towns into places people feared after dark lay beneath hospital lights connected to machines while armed federal agents stood outside every door. Reporters gathered beyond barricades. Helicopters circled overhead. Across the country, millions waited for the sentence everyone expected. Confess. Explain. End it. But Mercer barely spoke. Doctors fought internal bleeding while investigators prepared emergency interviews beside his hospital bed. Detective Laura Vance arrived shortly before sunrise, carrying photographs, maps, names, and decades of unanswered questions compressed into boxes stacked against sterile white walls. Rachel Dunn, Melissa Crane, Emily Grayson, Eleanor Shaw, Denise Merrow, Olivia Reed, the unidentified victims, the women still waiting for names. Mercer stared toward the ceiling when Vance entered. No expression, no fear, no anger, only exhaustion. For several moments, neither spoke. Machines beeped softly between them. Rain tapped against hospital windows. Then Vance placed Emily Grayson's photograph beside his bed. The same school picture used for decades. The same smile frozen forever before Briar Lane. Mercer's eyes shifted, just slightly. "You remembered everything," Vance said quietly. Silence. "You remembered their shoes, their voices, their clothes." Mercer swallowed painfully. "You remember where they stood?" "Nothing." Then Vance leaned closer. "But you never remembered them." Mercer's eyes finally moved toward her. Vance placed another photograph beside Emily. Then another. Then another. Victims. Faces. Names. Lives. Not trophies. Not memories. People. For the first time during the entire investigation, Daniel Mercer looked away. Minutes later, his blood pressure crashed. Doctors rushed inside. Nurses flooded the room. Monitors screamed. Detectives moved back against walls while medical teams fought to stabilize him beneath flashing lights and shouted commands. Then suddenly, silence. One continuous tone filled the room. Daniel Mercer died at 7:42 a.m. No final confession. No apology. No explanation. No satisfaction. Only silence. But his last sentence remained alive inside every investigator's mind. There's one more under the water. Within hours, search teams returned to Ash Creek, then to Black Hollow, then to every lake, drainage system, reservoir, and river crossing tied to Mercer throughout 4 decades. Divers worked through freezing currents while sonar crews scanned beneath bridges and collapsed. Industrial structures. Days passed. Nothing. Then 2 weeks later, investigators returned to Black Hollow Reservoir after reviewing old aerial photographs from the early 90s. Detective Vance noticed something almost invisible in one image. A rectangular disturbance beneath the waterline near the far edge of the reservoir. Not natural. Too symmetrical. Divers descended immediately. Visibility underwater barely reached a few feet. Mud swallowed light. Tree branches drifted through darkness beneath the surface. Then one diver saw concrete. Not debris. A structure. Search crews uncovered a submerged utility chamber forgotten after reservoir expansion decades. Earlier, the entrance had been sealed intentionally using industrial equipment. Mercer knew about it. Of course he knew. When crews finally opened the chamber, nobody spoke. Inside sat a small room preserved beneath cold black water. Photographs cover the walls. Blue restraint tabs hung from rusted nails. Newspaper clippings floated in stagnant pools along the floor. And near the center of the chamber, investigators found human remains. Female. Young. Wrapped carefully inside deteriorated plastic. No juice. Forensic identification took 11 days. The victim's name was Sarah Whitaker. 17 years old. Missing since 1973. No body. No answers. No suspects. For 33 years, Sarah's family believed she ran away after an argument at home. Instead, she had been Mercer and Walter Grigg's first known victim. The first one, Mercer's final secret. The beginning. News of Sarah's identification spread across Black Hollow quietly. By then, reporters had already moved on toward newer tragedies and fresher headlines. Television crews disappeared. Satellite trucks vanished. The noise faded. But for Black Hollow, nothing returned to normal. Because places remember. Briar Lane remained empty after sunset. Drivers still accelerated, unconsciously passing through certain roads. Parents still called children home before dark. And every October, flowers appeared beside the place where Emily Grayson's car had been found. Nobody knew who left them. Maybe former classmates. Maybe strangers. Maybe people too young to remember her, but old enough to inherit the fear she left behind. Years later, Detective Laura Vance returned there alone one evening as autumn wind moved through. Trees above the road. The town looked peaceful, quiet, normal, exactly the way it looked before everything happened. She stood beside the flowers for a long time without speaking. Because after 40 years of graves and evidence and darkness, one truth remained heavier than every confession investigators never received. Monsters rarely arrive looking like monsters. They stand beside you in grocery stores. They wave from passing trucks. They help carry boxes. They smile. And then they disappear back into ordinary life while entire communities sleep without realizing. Evil just drove home beside them. Far away, the wind moved softly through Briar Lane. The trees whispered overhead. And somewhere beneath the silence of Black Hollow, the echoes never really stopped. Because names can finally be found. Bodies can finally come home. Cases can finally close. But some places remember forever.